Director of Development Services, Town Engineer. For you tonight is all the FY25 Development Services budgets and articles. We analyzed, honestly, every single line every year. I do it personally, every line. Right? All the department heads, we look at it. If there's anything we can do to make things more efficient, we do it. And you'll see some of that in the budget tonight. Right now I'm talking about all development services departments. Because some people are still confused of what that actually is, because it's relatively new. It happened several years ago. They put me in charge of several departments in engineering, building and zoning, board of health, planning, environmental affairs and conservation commission, code enforcement, weights and measures, and GIS. So that's all underneath me. So I'm the Director of Development Services. That's it. And I'm also the Assistant Town Manager. But those are all underneath me. I'd like to just go through a little overall presentation on development services first. It's not long, and then I'll get into engineering. If that's okay. Does that work for you? Just mention what those departments are. I'd like to just kind of mention that this is an important statement because there was a lot of thought put into this when we were forming development services, and it means a lot. But we actually live and die by it every day. And our department's our mission statement. And some of you have this in the packet of information I gave you, the Finance Committee. But the mission of development services is to build and maintain a strong and effective group of departments that remain focused on providing superior customer service to the town of Stoughton, its residents, the general public, the development community, and the town departments while maintaining a positive relationship in all our interactions, as well as a professional work environment. Our group will partner with the development community to encourage and to ensure a development process that's proficient, reasonable, and predictable while promoting the economic growth, safety, usability, and sustainability of our town. It's not just a statement, we really mean that. It's especially for me, when I was in the private sector, being a private civil engineer, going to different towns and seeing how they're doing things, having a predictable, permitting path is very important from project to project. And I feel like when we come in, we treat everybody exactly the same. Doesn't matter if it's John Anzavino or somebody else. It doesn't matter who they are. So, we really mean that. We live and die by that, and it's really important to have a predictable process. With your backup information, there was an org chart. The document started off with the first page that looked like this. And that just goes through our mission statement, what I've already talked to you about, and it shows you all the departments that are under development, departments and divisions under development services. So that's what that looks like. If you don't have that, we have extra copies we can hand out to you tonight. If anybody needs a copy, raise your hand. And I really need these now. I need them, but I need them. Okay. Well, I've been out like 45, but it was like 2 years ago when I switched turn and I need them. Okay, so our first department is engineering. I think the best way to go through this is just what I do with these budgets is I will highlight the bigger changes. I'm sure. Oh, you highlighted the whole document.
I checked the whole document.
Okay.
I marked and read my question.
I'm like, that was a good if you highlight the whole thing. So, John and I differ slightly. He highlights the line as he goes. I like the big changes. I'll go through all the big changes, which are also footnoted for the most part. You go down to the top, engineering. On page 29. Engineering footnote 1, assistant town engineer position, reclassified, person getting a promotion, proposed promotion. I'll go through all the reasoning if you could let me get through the budget, and then I'll go through the reasoning of some of these things afterwards. The assistant town engineer got promoted, reclassified to Assistant Director of Development Services / Assistant Town Engineer. And we'll go through the details of that in a little bit, of the reasoning for that. So that's the first footnote, footnote 1. Something that's not footnoted, that should be footnoted, is meeting wages. That line got added in. It's 2 lines underneath the line I just talked to you about. That's $5,000. That's the Conservation Commission meeting minutes. We've had a part-time secretary position for years. It's been unfilled. The Conservation Commission have been doing their own meeting minutes. So we need to add a line in there to account for that. Development Services Secretary, that got removed from this budget. Okay? The Development Services Secretary in funding got moved to the clerk's office. Again, there's a lot of stuff I got to talk to you about the details. I'm just giving you the high level right now. That position in funding got moved to the clerk's office, and I'll get into the reason why. So, Program Admin 2 position, right underneath that, footnote 4. That is a position that does licensing in town, selective licensing. That was in the clerk's office, got moved to Development Services. They're physically located in the building department, but they work for all departments. They still do licensing. Licensing is about half their job. The other half is to assist all the other departments in what they do. Just like the part-time position that we just said got removed and added to the clerk's office did. So it's just a swap of half it. The last big change, footnote 3, is the super longevity. We've had an expert conservation environmental affairs person, James Collins, who's in the room tonight. We're lucky to have him, but he's been here for a while, and for contractual reasons, they can get super longevity for 3 years in a row at 5%. So that's in there. Down to expenses, GIS operational expenses is the only line that changed under expenses for engineering. Went from $9,000 to $9,500. That's just the cost for the software this year, for the people's GIS software we utilize for our GIS. Now I'll get into kind of some of the reasoning behind some of the bigger changes that I mentioned to you. Because there are a couple in here, right? The first big change, as I refer to it, is the reclassification, promotion of Craig Horsfall, who's in the room tonight. He's the assistant town engineer. He's been here for about 8 years. I mean, I could go on and on. I know some of you have had a lot of experience with Craig. He's very quiet. He's behind the radar. He does a great job. He's one of those kind of people. But he's my wingman in everything I do, not just engineering. And my bad was the last 4 or 5 years since being the director of development. I don't know when to take these off. Being the director of development services, he's been helping me out in everything I do. Budgets for all departments, articles, grant management. We get some big grants, multi-million-dollar grants quite often. For the sewer project, we got it. For traffic projects all over town, we get those CHIP grants. Right of way, we do it all. He manages all those grants, and there's never an issue. Like he's one of those people you can give something to and not have to worry about it, which is priceless for somebody in my position. And there's other people like that. He's not the only person in this town hall like that, but for me, he's my right-hand person. When I'm not here, I can go on vacation and feel like everything's going to be fine. And that's a great feeling to have, because I have Craig. I honestly could go on and on. Like I said, he gets into the budgets, he gets into the articles. He's here tonight. He does this quite often. He covers meetings for me when I can't attend. Manages multi-million-dollar grants. Does all his engineering stuff. Does all the reviews for planning board, technical reviews. I could go on and on about Craig. So it's about time that this gentleman in the room here gets a pay raise to reflect what he does, quite frankly. And his title will be changing from assistant town engineer to assistant town engineer / assistant director of development services. So my title is director of development services / town engineer, and I think there's other slashes on it. But that would be his title. So this is a promotion. It's an exactly $10,000 increase, and it's done on purpose. So if you think about it, we would have got a 2.5% increase, so it's not exactly a $10,000 raise. There's been a normal raise in there, but it's just under 10,000 for Craig's increase. That goes from 108 to 118. We gave you comparables, and every year, it doesn't matter what comparables you do, nobody agrees with them. So I mean, you can use the comparables of the baseline. It's tough. It's a tough position to do comparables because the name of it's a little different. But assistant DPW directors or DPW directors in smaller towns or things like that is what we compared to. And when we did the average, it was slightly higher than what you see on this sheet. And we can agree to disagree with comparables. I get it. I use that as just a starting point. And for mostly the public, they say we're not just throwing this number out of the hat. And then I use common sense and I say, listen, this gentleman is worth this amount of money because of what he does and what he provides to this town. So that's that position. The restructure, there's a restructure going on here, right? So the Development Services Secretary, and I'm going to be overlapping a couple of departments because I kind of have to. The Development Services Secretary is a half-time position that was funded for conservation and other development services purposes in the past. They did do some meeting minutes also. As part of the restructure with development services, we brought licensing up to development services from the clerk's office. It was not it was an agreement. Nobody was mad at each other. Everybody liked the idea, and it made sense. And the reason why it makes sense is because licensing, all the stakeholders in licensing are all the departments in development services. We have Board of Health and Building Department and Planning that pretty much sign off almost on every license that goes to the select board. Every single one. And most of those building and Board of Health are usually the two critical ones. So, the person in this position is always up in our area. Always, it's great. They're nagging us, like, hey, can you get this? Can you review this? Can you do this? Can you get this done? And they're a very persistent person, which I love. I love somebody bothering me constantly if I'm not getting something done. It'll get done.
No, we have that.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey.
I feel the love.
Feel the love? All right. Good. So anyways, this person's great. And it's also great because one of the reasons we're kind of holding off on the development services part-time secretary is when you have a part-time position, and it's not for everybody. I mean, sometimes you find a rock star with a part-time position, but it's hard to find somebody who really cares when they're part-time, especially in this, and really knows the inner workings of our departments. This other restructure, by bringing the licensing person, the program administrator upstairs, half their time is licensing, they're still doing it. The other half can be dedicated to servicing our other departments, which that other half-time position in the building department was doing. So that position got moved to the COA in the building department. Across departments now. I just went from engineering to building. We haven't got the building yet, so that's why you may feel a little confused. But there's a part-time secretary in building that's getting moved to COA. By moving the licensing clerk upstairs, now you have somebody that actually understands a little bit about all the departments. Where do you find that? By hiring somebody off the street. You don't. They know a little bit about Board of Health, a little bit about building, a little bit about planning, and that's a huge asset for us. Sorry, no problem. That's a huge asset for someone like myself, somebody for Chris, who's our office administrator. Did you throw that at me? No. Okay.
This is so awesome. She dropped it. She was
First
odd.
one to attack.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. That's all.
Yeah, no, it was just such an awesome
You
speech.
never throw things at me.
No.
All right. Moving along? Okay. All right. Okay. This might be the engineer and me being a little detailed here and trying to explain all this, but I think you warrants that. So we talked about Craig's position. We talked about the program admin 2 licensing position and the development services part-time secretary position in engineering. That position is going to the clerk's office. So if you think about it, half the licensing clerk, this is important, half the licensing clerk was down there doing licensing. The other half, they were doing duties associated with the clerk's office, whatever they may be. They're getting the half-time position from the engineering department in their office. to service that need. So they have a net, their tasks are a net zero. These licensings coming out of the clerk's office, it's going into the development services division. If that makes sense. I don't know if I need to clarify that for you. In talking to our town clerk, they're in agreement with this. We actually signed a little internal agreement. And we're not just voting, we all get along, we try to all get along. If this person's needed down there over the next year, there's a lot of elections coming up, and that was part of the duties this election person did, they're gonna go down there and help her out. They've already been doing it for this current one that we're in right now. So that's how we roll in my world, is we want to help everybody out. I just don't want people to think, because I've heard rumors that this is a bad thing, and somebody's saying that the clerk doesn't agree with it. Listen, I would have never really went down this path. I actually rather not pull another duty into our office, but we did. This was the right thing for the town. It made sense for the town to do it. The clerk was on board with it. I had a conversation with myself with her. It was actually my idea, to be honest with you. So that's engineering with a little overlap into some other departments. Any questions?
Where do you want to start?
Question? Joel, you have a question?
Yeah, Mark, you have a line item under expenses called stormwater coordinator for $95,000. I assume this is an outside service?
Yeah, correct.
Is it a service that you've had, the same service for the same number of years or a number of years?
Yeah. That's a fantastic question, because I actually wanted to mention that it's part of the presentation.
We asked you to change that from coordinator to coordination because it's not a person.
You
That's
can still change it.
one reason, but that
No,
might have been
no,
it.
I mean,
I
I
understand what
made
you're
note
saying,
because we
yeah.
asked it last year that if we could change it, just because it's not a person, it's a function.
Yeah, it's a.
Well, it's a company. It's
Well,
an
that was my
engineering
bad.
firm,
That's
I
my bad
assume.
for not getting that changed.
Yeah, okay.
But,
It went in because.
it went, see, you're dialed in with me. So it went in because for several years, we were having the same article at town meeting for somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 for this stuff. And when you have an article every year at town meeting, it tells you something. For the same thing. It should be in your operating budget, right? And then so, and I'll give John and Vaughn a lot of credit on this one. They were hounding us like, hey, listen, this should be in your operating budget. So, and on a side note, you'll see a future article that is labeled Pond Management Program, because there was some concerns with the finance committee members that we don't have lakes, which they're correct. They're ponds. So we'll change the title of that.
Could I
But we
ask
did
the-
miss the coordination part, so.
Can I ask the name of the company that you're using?
We use environmental partners for most of our stuff.
Okay, and are they on a multi-year contract with the town of Stoughton?
Yep.
Okay, you have $95,000 for this coming fiscal year. You had $95,000 for last fiscal year. For fiscal year '23, you only spent a little over $11,000. And in fiscal year '24 to date, according to this, you haven't spent any money on this.
Every year, we use the full amount. We do.
What happened in fiscal year '23?
It was still an article at that time.
I think it was still an article.
That might have been an article, yeah. We use the money every year. I don't mind giving you the reports on that, sending that along, because we literally do use every dollar.
I do remember the discussion on this. What happened was, it was an article every year.
Right.
The problem is that it's mandated to the federal government.
I
So the
remember this,
concern was brought up that if it didn't pass town meeting, the town was going to be in violation of that mandate from the federal government. So it was discussed with Mr. Tisdale about getting this in the operating budget to make sure that it would be done, because it's federal law. And I think it switched over the year before, so probably, that's 11 probably left over when it was still an article.
I got something to add. The reason why there's some money in that is that there was a line in there with like $15,000.
Yes, there was a small.
There's a small amount in there that we utilize for like the Ponset doing their teaching at the schools and things like that. It's like,
But your anticipation is for the fiscal year '25 to spend the entire money, $95,000?
yeah,
Including the fiscal year '24?
yeah. I've actually got a quote somewhere in my file here for those services this year. I can forward it along to you if you like. We get a quote. So every year we have $15,000 with I always forget the name, Ponset River Valley Association through. They do all the teachings at the elementary schools. They bring the kids out to some of the stormwater designs we did at the Gibbon School. That's part of the requirement for our atmospheric permit, is public outreach. So that satisfies that, that's $15,000. And then we usually contract environmental partners for the $80,000 for all the other requirements of the permit. Sampling, IDE, testing, things like that.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Any other questions on this? Mark, Scott?
Yes, mine was on that also, but I also had on the line right underneath that telephone, 2023, you spent $2,000. This year you haven't spent any. You're asking for $4,000 again. I was wondering what
See,
the
this
need
column,
for that is.
that's a
Or
good
can we
question.
eliminate that, and save some money?
But we use our phones, we use our phones for business. We don't use our personal cell phones, and we also use like Craig, all our inspectors, we have phones that we do inspections with when we're in the field. We actually have inspection phones that we created electronically with GIS, and we do the inspection, it uploads right as a point to the parcel you're doing an inspection on, so it's there forever. So it's really critical to our operation to have the phones. I don't, this column, I'll be honest with you, even last night, we were all confused of why the numbers are the way they are. I'm confused too, because we usually encumber the cell phones all at once in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, but encumbrance is different than actual, so.
Yeah, so I don't know why it says 0, maybe it's that for that reason. But
Many
anyways,
people don't talk anymore.
So has money been spent there or not?
So I know the answer.
Oh, great.
So,
thank you very much.
as of November.
Please identify yourself for the
Sorry,
record.
so Mary Jane Martin, internal auditor. I can tell you that some of them are not correct, they're saying 0. The cell phones are all paid from centralized purchasing, and then a journal entry is done to hit each of the departments. The journal entries have not been done when this was in November. So they all use all of their money.
Thank you. I owe you one.
Yeah, 'cause they locked this down.
Nice save.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one
You
good.
good with that, Mark? Do you have any follow-up question on that?
Yeah, just, so, stuff's not getting entered in, how did you make it?
No, it does get entered in just in a different way. It doesn't show up at this point.
This document was locked down before they had the data to populate the department by department, allocation, if you want to call it that. They don't have that here.
Any other questions on the engineering? Mr. Enzavino, do you have a question?
Yeah.
John Enzavino?
Yeah, John Enzavino, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, came for last year, thankfully. I hate to bring this up, but I'm going to. Because we had a bit of a to-do about this last year at town meeting, and this lists you as 0.8%. You're still full-time in this position, correct?
I am 0.8%.
So we should reduce your salary then, because you're not doing 100% of this job, because 20% of your job is now listed as the assistant town manager.
The number there reflects 0.8.
Well, the number reflects a 2.9% raise from a 1 total FTE last year. Now, I know there was a bit of a discussion about this last year at town meeting, because what was said at town meeting was different than what was presented to us. And when I said it was presented that you would be doing 80% of your time as this position and 20% of your time as the assistant town manager, I was told at town meeting that that was never said. And it was, because all you have to do is watch the tape, and it was said 3 times at minimum. So the question is, if this is only representing 80% of your time and the other 20%, if that's your full time, then this salary doesn't make sense staying that high if you're being cut back from a full time to 80%.
Well, I totally disagree with you on that.
Are you doing extra time?
I'm here.
Well, I know you do,
I'm here
believe me,
tonight,
I
And
know.
I'm here every Monday and Thursday
Right.
for the next 3 weeks.
I understand that.
So,
And I don't want you to take this burden. That's why I wish the other guy was still here. because we were told distinctly that you would be doing extra time for the assistant town manager job. You may call it semantics, but I don't. Because I raised this last year, that if you were only doing 80% as the engineer, the director of services and the whole thing, then the pay should reflect that, if your duties are being cut to 80% of the time. But if you're actually doing 120%, that's a different story. And I'd rather see this as a full-time employee.
I get it. So
You know what I
that's-
mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Unfortunately, one person is one FTE. I can't make myself 1.5 FTEs, which I'm actually doing right now. Okay, I actually work on the weekends, you get emails on weekends, I stay here late at night, I work way more than the hours that I get paid for, which I'm fine with. I enjoy this town, I actually am very supportive and very happy of what the town has given to me the last few years. I've always got bumped up by different town managers, and I've never asked for one raise since I've been here. And I'm very, very grateful for town meeting, for finance committee. We've always been supportive of that. This is semantics with numbers for me, and I know it's not about me. You're talking about what was discussed.
No, but
by
you
the
know
town
what,
manager
you know what
also.
I'm saying is,
I do.
it was presented actually this way last year, but at town meeting it was, no, he's 100% here, and he's gonna give us extra time to do the other job.
Like
And,
I said, I can't put one here and put .2 over there because it has to add to one.
does it?
Yeah, I'm one employee, it's a full-time equivalent employee. So there's no way of making it what I actually do because you have to
But
have,
you,
it's gotta have to.
you know what I'm saying,
So
you understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
All right. I said, don't take it personal, I'm just making the point from what we went
I'm
through
not
last
taking
year.
I'm not taking it personal, I get it because of what.
And I know, because we've spent time after meetings, we've gone
I
down
mean,
to
there's
your
another
office
option,
and discussed
there's another
this.
option too. You can vote to reduce, you can take the.
No, I
town
wouldn't,
manager
I
position off. because,
I wouldn't,
um,
I'm not, I'm just making the point that there was a big runaround about this last year. And,
I try to do all this to be
because-
helpful to everybody.
because
you know?
with the extra duties you have and what you have taken on, has now had a domino effect to, and I'm not taking anything away from Craig either, but it has a domino effect because you're tied up with certain things. He's taken on more, so now it goes down. And this has been brought up by this committee for a few years, that it's not a sustainable thing to put more and more and more on one person, because if that person leaves, you can't replace it. And it's just not, in my mind, and there were others, it was not a good model to just keep piling more titles on and expecting this, expecting. So,
I respect what you say, John, I really do. But what you'll see in this budget is we are planning for the next person, if that day comes, to take over. And that's what, we have succession planning in this budget. There's not just one person that can do my job. Maybe not one person that can do as good as me.
that goes without, that goes without
The next
saying.
person is this guy.
That goes without saying.
He is honestly very capable of doing it, and that's why we're playing this way, because if something happened to me, or I did a different job somewhere else, then he can jump right in.
And then just your explanations, and I understand the bouncing around, because I was doing it when I was going through this, and I'm over in COA, and I'm all down in the
Yeah.
clerk's office, and the issue I had was, the clerk is now advertising for that or that part-time person. I think the ad was in this week's Suburban Shop or whatever, so the person wasn't there. You didn't have that part-time person. That got moved down to the clerk.
The position was
No.
funded but not filled.
That's what I'm saying, the position, this was here, but there was no physical body doing it.
Exactly.
And my concern is with, over all the years, and it'll come up more with the clerk's office, but we fought, and town meeting agreed that that office should have a full-time person, and that full-time person is now gone, and it's gonna be replaced with a half-time person. And it just, to me, and I know you gave the explanation that, well, the licensing moved out, and so that act would take care of the other part. And I just have to chuckle, because that position was always done by the secretary for the Board of Selectmen for many, many years. And we had an administrator, a town manager, who felt it belonged in the clerk's office and was adamant about it when they moved it down there. And now we're being told, no, it doesn't belong there, it belongs somewhere else. And so, I mean, if you've been around for a while, you know, you follow the trail and you gotta wonder,
I've been around for that trail. so,
I know.
um,
And so it's just, I think, is that, I wanna make sure, so your thought on that was by moving that position to your umbrella, I'll just call it the umbrella, there's too many of them in it. By putting it there, and the licensing is only a certain portion of time. So if she's doing that, and then she was doing that in the other position as well, and so now the balance would have been what you're replacing, is that,
Right, so we're
is
swapping,
that, but I mean, is
that's
that,
the half FT, right?
is that my understanding, is
That's
that
exactly
you're,
what it is.
you're just saying that, well, she was only half-time down there
Yep.
for all the other duties?
In
Okay,
the-
I mean, I know she was in
The
there
town
tonight,
clerk would verify that.
but I saw her in there tonight, you know, coming in, I saw her down there, so. I just wanted to make sure
So,
I
I
understood
mean, in all
your
this, there's no
explanation.
new people, no new FTEs.
Yeah.
Everything's just moving around.
No, that's, I just wanted to make sure I understood the thought behind that particular position as far as cutting it back where we had just given her another full-time last year. So. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee on the engineering budget here? I have a question regarding that position that was moved from the clerk's office up to wherever it was moved. How's it being paid now? If the position's been moved, where's the money coming from?
Clerical positions can be in any office. So the money can be paid for from the same money. It's a clerical.
So the
It
money's
would be
coming from the clerk's department?
inappropriate for like the assistant town engineer to be paid from the clerk's office. These are clerical positions.
No, excuse me, what Vaughn's trying to say is that there's only one department as a source unless you carved up that person like 0.5, and then there's two departments that are contributing to the income, to the pay. Not what they do in terms of clerk title, but sources of funding her pay is coming from either one department or two, depending on how you're cutting up the percentage of that FTE. So he's talking about the department source going into her pay.
Right. So she's doing licensing duties, which she was doing in the clerk's office for half the time. The other duties are clerical duties. So those duties are still happening. She's just physically located in a different spot.
So the clerk's department is still paying for the position then?
Yeah.
Okay.
The funding is in the clerk's office.
Okay.
The duties are the same. They're just in a different spot.
Clerical duties are not in the clerk's office anymore.
No, clerical duties, but clerical is an umbrella that covers a lot of things.
No, this is a semantics thing. It's so obvious. Vaughn just wants to know the source of the funding, regardless of the title and what the job function is, regardless.
So it's coming
He
from
just
the
wants to
clerk's
know,
office.
is it paid from this bucket or that? Because it can only come from,
Until
yes.
pending town meeting approval, this year it's being paid for by the clerk's office.
Okay, so the clerk's office is now paying for the position that's
Right.
in the engineering department,
That's in development. sir.
in development.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, I just want clarification on that. Any other questions or comments from the committee on the engineering department budget? Questions or comments from the public on the engineering? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. I was informed by SMAC that my adaptive listening device will not work in this room. And I've turned my hearing aids up to max, but I can only hear about a third of what's going on. So if my comments or questions are redundant, I apologize for my disability.
Don't apologize.
Has there been a consideration to raising fees to cover some of these increases?
That's a great question. We actually are going to have new fees put in front of the select board in the next month. We've already actually got the draft prepared. That's not the reason we're doing it, but the reason we're actually doing it, but it does fall in line with this, is because online permitting is coming soon, and we want to revise the fees. So when we build the permitting, it has fees that are going to be good for a few years, as opposed to building the online permitting with old fees and having to go back and put the new fees in. So we're going to have all new fees very soon.
Mr. Chairman, I'm aware that many of the fees you can't raise yourself. A lot of them have to be raised by either town meeting action or by the board, the select board. So it may take a while to increase the fees in some cases.
I've had the same question, so I asked town council that exact question, because we have multiple departments. Some of them have boards or commissions, some of them are engineering, which doesn't have a board or commission. And most of them, like say Board of Health, for example, Board of Health got approved by Board of Health, but they're also gonna go to the select board to get approval. Our opinion from town council was that all fees should go and get approved by the select board. There's nothing about town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a point, Cynthia, just a point is, this is our last meeting in this room.
I understand that.
I just wanted to let you know.
It's not your fault
No, it is your fault.
that I'm disabled, and it's not anybody's fault that the device doesn't work in this room, and it's not your fault that this is the only room. I mean, just based on the size of the audience, this is not the best room.
Right.
But I understand it's the best you could do.
But I just wanted you to know that it is our last meeting in this room.
Yes,
so-
I read the Suburban Shopper, and I know we'll
Okay.
be upstairs, and I'll be fine as far as that goes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions or comments from the public on the engineering department budget? Okay. Economic development, you want to cover that, or do you want to start bundling these, or you want to one by one, economic development?
Economic development.
Page 18 in the budget.
So, I'm Pam McCarthy, the Director of Economic Development, and my budget is much less complex than the engineering budget. I actually was a part of development services until about 6 months ago for the last 4 years. The reason I now report directly to the town manager is because he has me doing some other things too, but I still work with development services on a regular basis because I'm the point of contact for all the businesses. So whenever a new business is looking to come into town to either open an establishment or to build a new building, I coordinate the meetings because they have to talk to engineering, board of health, planning, and the building department. So I'm still heavily involved with the development services. So as I said, I actually do the regular economic development activities, and I'm the liaison for the businesses in town. But besides being an economic development director, I've had the new role for about the last 6 or 7 months as being the grant manager for all of the town departments. That's because there was a need for a coordination among the different departments, because what was happening is there are some grants that people didn't know someone else was applying to, and you don't want to cannibalize each other. You want to know what each other is doing. There are also some departments that are great at writing their own grants and they don't need any help at all. There are others that just have ideas like, I need money for so-and-so or a certain project, and they need some assistance. So what I've done is I put together a forum to create a database. I put that out to all the different department heads, and I asked, what grants have you already received in the last couple of years, and what grants are you waiting for an answer on that you've recently applied to, and what projects do you need help with? So I put that all together on a Google Sheet, so we'll all be able to share that. And then as far as grant management is concerned, I'm not going to, physically can't write the grants for all the different departments, but I actually will write ones that are related to what I do, or some certain ones for the town manager. For instance, he wanted a grant for the ADA to do the plan as to what we need to do for the different buildings, called the ADA transition plan. That's something that the building department will be working on, but I helped to get that grant. And then also financial policies and procedures is another grant that the town manager wanted to get, so I was able to use the community compact to get that. So once I get the grants, If it's related to economic development, I'll manage them. But if not, I actually will get them to the point where the department head that's going to be in charge of that can do it. So I'll help make sure that it gets through the contract and the procurement process, and that we help with the outreach and do the kickoff meetings, and then I can hand it over to people. And then besides those two jobs, I actually run a municipal aggregation program for the town, and that's, a lot of you know about it, that's the energy program that provides electricity from a third-party supplier to the town. It's called the Stoughton Community Choice Power Program. And as of September, the town had saved over $2.2 million on the electric bills jointly for the residents and the small businesses. So that's something that I also do. And then I'm now the legislative liaison. So that's something else the town manager wanted someone to take the role of. So I helped get the legislative breakfast together that we had in August. And that was when we had Congressman Lynch and our state senator and reps together. Because there's a need, you actually have to pester your legislative people in order to make them have the town of Stoughton at the forefront in their thoughts and let them know these are our needs, you know, where are we at, is there any new assistance coming our way, you know, can we apply for any earmarks? So that's basically so that we can actually, on a more regular basis, be having interactions with our legislative bodies and let them know what our needs are. And then also the film liaison. So we've had a couple of things, Little Women filmed in the train depot. That's something that's, you know, a miscellaneous job that somebody needed to do it. So I actually get calls every couple of months about people that want to film things. And then I also help with PR and marketing for the community. I don't know if you, this is a plug for it, but there's a Discover Stoughton Mass app that I put together because it has a business directory and it has like a separate part for restaurants, as well as a lot of information about what's going on with town government and things like that. But that was to help the businesses out during the pandemic, but it's something that we are going to carry on with. So that's also in my budget, you'll see. And then I also helped out, I did a lot of community planning type things, like I ran a community development block grant program where I did sign and facade programs, and I did the parking management plan, and I also did highest and best use studies of the Randolph Savings Bank and the train depot, and just worked on a lot of that type of thing too. So, like I said, my budget isn't, you know, complicated at all. Not much of it has changed. The only thing that I think there might be a question about is it says on here that that app that I mentioned is now included in this account, the Discover Stoughton Mass app. It's under dues and subscriptions. Actually, that was already on here last year, but it went up 8.5% because the company gave me the wrong estimate for the past year. It only went up 5% between last year and this year, even though it's at 8.5%, but that's just because the amount was a little bit low the previous year. And then I have a consultant line item in there. That hasn't gone up. I've had it. So far this year, I really haven't accessed it much. But the reason that's in there is for a couple of things. For one thing, having that just a little bit of money in there gives me the ability to potentially make a grant application more competitive. Sometimes, even if you put a couple of $1,000s of the town's money into a project, the state's going to take you more seriously and say they're really invested in this project, and you're more likely to get the grant. And sometimes there's something when you're applying for a grant that you're required to do to even be eligible at all. For instance, when I applied for the community development block grant, I did the sign and facade program, and also it gave money to micro enterprise grants during the pandemic. To initially get that, I had to do a slums and blight study. I was lucky that the SRA was able to contribute $15,000 to get that study done, but I can't count on asking the SRA for money every time I'm applying for a grant. And also, now that I'm the grant manager for the whole town, I don't know when there's going to be a need for a couple $1,000s for whatever grant, because we're trying to plan out a year and a half from now. And the other thing is, with that $10,000, you're trying to avoid lost opportunities. What happened a few years ago is I did the highest and best use study of the Randolph Savings Bank. And if I only had another $3,000, I could have done the same study of the train depot at the same time. I couldn't find $3,000 anywhere. So I did that study almost 4 years later, when I could have had it done already. So that's the other reason why that money is in there. So other than that, I don't think a lot has changed. Mark wanted to say one thing, and then you can let me know after if you have any questions.
I don't think it's proper for a department head who's getting a raise to talk about their own raise. That's why I figured I'd step in for Pam. She is getting above the 2.5% increase that's in the budget. I think it's like
8.1.
8.1. You can backtrack the 2.5 that she would have got anyways out of that. So it's not the full amount that you see. It's the difference. It's the minus of that. All I can say about Pam is I've worked with you for about 8 years now. And 9 years. Yeah. So she's the most organized person I know. I thought I was organized. She's very organized. Very thorough. Completes everything to the T. You give her something to do, very much like Craig that I was mentioning before. She gets it done. To exactly what you said. Some of you have experience with Pam, some of you don't. I can vouch for that. I'll take the organization thing. I want to make sure I mention Mary Jane. She's very organized. So she's one of the most organized people I know. But from Pam's standpoint, taking on this grant, writing and management, depending on the skill set of the department, is huge for the town. We never really had a central function for that, and now Pam has taken that on. She does a great job with it. She's a phenomenal spreadsheet. She's always communicating with department heads on, did you get any new grants? What's the amount? She goes through the budget, everything. She probably communicates with Mary Jane and does a lot on the numbers. But to me, this is a minimal amount. From a department head, I know Pam was one of the underpaid department heads, in my opinion, probably for many years. Now it's warranted. She's got a proven track record. She gets the work done, and she deserves the raise.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Economic Development. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah,
Dave, Lori?
is that okay, John?
Of course, I usually go last.
All right. Through you, Vaughn, David Lurie on the Finance Committee. Through you to, I guess, Mark, I'm not sure. I guess I'm very grateful that we have somebody very skilled to getting grants. I know that we've been able to get a lot more grants than we used to back in the day, so I'm grateful that we have someone who can do that proficiently and with the skill that you have there. I guess my impression of an economic development person would also involve outreach to the areas like to chambers of commerce, the banks, the places where businesses are out there saying, gee, I wonder where I should set up shop, where you would then interact with the business community. Are there any interactions with people outside of Stoughton who you can talk
Yeah.
to and praise Stoughton as being a place to set up?
So I didn't really go into my regular job because it's been that for 9 years, but as my regular job, I'm on all the regional planning agencies. I actually set up a bank consortium for Stoughton, which is banks that do business within Stoughton that may be headquartered someplace else. I'm the one who also, like I said, the legislative liaison. I did that even before. I used to work for the state, so I know people at Mass Office of Business Development, Mass Development, all those different agencies, so I reach out to them for assistance. When people come in that are proposing, lately I've had 2 housing developers that I arranged meetings with Mass Housing Partnership and Mass Development to talk about financial assistance, different types of funding, bonds, loan guarantee programs, things like that. So actually, dealing with the businesses is my #1 job. I do that on almost a daily basis. I mean, I actually, like I said, put together joint meetings. I can't tell you what company it is right now, but I actually helped organize and assist a a Fortune 500 company that's going to be locating in Stoughton within the next 6 months. I also am dealing with a brewery that's been trying to get into Stoughton. So I have a filing cabinet full of the businesses that have actually helped. I helped 2 new medical practices get into Stoughton in the last 6 months. So that's actually my number one job,
Yeah.
is to do that. And also during the pandemic, my number one job is keeping the businesses that we had. I got millions of dollars in grants. I gave out 61 grants to help keep people here. So we didn't lose them because I was able to do that. So it's 2 things. It's we want to keep what we have, and we want to attract new businesses.
If I could just say, I've watched over the years a lot of different select boards talk about the kind of business that they think that Stoughton could attract. And it was always trying to get, you know, the very high-paid employees to live here, you know, the pharmaceutical companies, things along those lines. But I always thought of Stoughton as having a certain brand that it kind of attracts a certain kind of business, a certain kind of employees, you know, that it's not as, you know, high professional, you know, high-level, C-level officer kind of people.
Right.
What do you see going on? Like, do you see Stoughton living up to its brand and attracting just, you know, the blue-collar kind of companies, or do you see us actually going into a change demographically in terms of a different kind of?
Is really a mixture. I mean, also the planner can tell you some of the businesses we've attracted recently too. We have like Milton Cat, and we have another equipment corporation that's interested in coming in that have, you know, some regular jobs. We also have a lot of professional jobs here too. I actually was on a meeting with Secretary Augustus, who was talking about housing, but a major developer was on that meeting, and what he had said was, this area that we're in right now is one of only the top 6 areas in the entire country for attracting high-paying jobs. And that's because of the infrastructure that we have, but also because of the educational institutions that we have in that area. So we are in a highly desirable area to attract those high-paying jobs. And we do have companies already that have those types of jobs. And it's the company that I was just talking about, it's a lot of engineers and positions like that. But then we also do have blue-collar positions also, and more traditional ones. And Stoughton is a mixture, as well as some of the other communities in this area. And we do have a lot of interest. I mean, you know, maybe Bill can go over some of the other ones, but there's a lot from all ranges, all salary ranges.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions, comments from the committee on the economic development? All right, Mark Struck, do you have a question?
2 questions. One of my questions is on the dues, subscriptions, and membership fees.
Right.
Why isn't that one line instead of 2 broken up lines? I know it's kind of a
That's
thing,
kind
but-
of the way I was told to do it. The majority of that line is the marketing app, the Discover Stoughton Mass app. That's pretty much, except for a few $100s, that's the majority of that line.
What membership fees?
Membership fees, so I think I said that I represent the town on different things. I'm actually vice president of the Massachusetts Economic Development Council. So there's a minor membership fee for that. NAOC I joined, which is the National Association of Industrial and Office Properties, which actually will help, especially when the sewer project is done. And I talked to Mark about the idea to do that, because when we're trying to attract more of that type of industry, that's good, because you have the database of the other members that actually own office and industrial properties. So it's things like that. NADER is the Northeast Economic Development Council. So it's those types of organizations.
All right, then my other question would be on the consultant fees. Should that description be changed to grant fees? It's not really, I don't see any consultant, it's more, we just pulling all of that money out just to do grants.
No, actually,
Like you said.
because that money is for consultants that either are helping you meet a grant requirement. Like in the past, we needed to do a slums and light survey to show we had some decadent areas in the downtown to be eligible for $1 million community development block grant. So they had to do a study first before we could get to that point. And another one I mentioned was a highest and best use study for the bank and the community code. So they actually, it really is money for consultants, but having those consultants in place actually helps you be either eligible or more competitive for a grant.
Shouldn't we name it like grant consultant fees then, so we know it's not for?
Well, you could say consultant fees including for grants, but I don't know, I guess there could be instances when it's not.
Well, if we need to add more
related
money into
directly.
it because you're doing more grants, all right, we need to add to the grant consultant fee instead of just, all right.
So depending on which department is going for a grant, a lot of them have their own consultant fees that they will dip into in order to help with studies and things that need to get done. I have that because sometimes I apply for things directly associated to economic development, but it also gives me a little bit of leeway if I'm working on something jointly with another department.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, economic development? Adam?
Go ahead.
Who is it, Adam?
Adam Yakabuchi, just a question about the grant database that you may have. So is that public information? So I'd be curious to see, what percent maybe we get, what we miss, maybe why we missed.
It's still in the beginning stages, but the intent is to make it public. I actually had done it in a way that I actually had like the charts and the graphs just showing, what agencies we had applied for, how many departments had how many grants out there. So that is the goal, to put the Google spreadsheet up online so that people can view it.
Yeah.
I've only been doing it for a couple of months, so right now I'm kind of perfecting it, but yes, I would like to do that.
Any other questions, comments from the committee? John Anzavino.
John Israino, Finance Committee member. This is actually for Mark. I meant to ask you when you were doing the engineering as well, but when you talk about doing comparables to get things, and this particular one you've used a number of different positions because you have economic development, you have grant people and so forth. But a general question, when you do your comparables, because the sets you gave here are totally different areas, totally different towns, even in the two that you do the comparables, none of which were local companies, but are you just looking at the salary you might find in a budget? Similar to like if you saw here that, oh, this is the budget for the economic developer, that's the development, that's the salary. Does this include everything else, or is it just salary?
I actually found the comparables for my job, and what I did was I had to look at what was recent, because it would do no good to get a job that was advertised in a nearby community 3 years ago. So those were the jobs that were open either right before I put together the budget or as I was doing it. And then I went by the description. So actually, when I had mentioned all the other things that I do, like the municipal aggregation plan and the legislative liaison, doing the grants, none of those are part of any of those normal jobs that I had found. And that's actually above and beyond what economic development directors ever do. And then, because grant management isn't part of an economic development director's job, I gave separate comps for that.
No, understood. It was more of a general question.
Yeah.
In this case, because there were multiple aspects, but in
was-
general, when you look at the comparables
It was recent.
that you've given us,
Yeah.
okay? Well, it's fine that they were recent, but if the towns aren't really comparable, and because a lot of times they do comparables and it's the surrounding towns, and when we're doing these and they're all over, but the question is more in general, do you just go out and see the advertisement for what the salary is, and so how do you actually do an apples to apples comparable if benefits and everything else aren't really included and you don't see the actual cost, you're just looking at salary? And that's what I'm wondering, if all you're looking at is
I was looking
a
at
line
job
item budget.
description, not salary. I was looking at
I know,
description.
HR has a process, I couldn't tell you exactly what that is. When I was doing the comparables for people in our department, I ourselves.
Mhm.
And like, for example, postings of jobs that are currently open in other towns is a great comparable, because that's what the rate is right now. It's not a person in the position that's been there for years, it's what the position's worth now. I love trying to get that information. You can't get it for every town.
No, but that's why I was wondering
So it's a mix
what
and
your
match
basis
things.
was for these, that's all.
I love finding ones that are being close to the property.
Mhm.
Can get that, we do that.
It was just to get the basis for what they were, because there are many different ways to look at things, and
Yeah, I got you.
so I appreciate the answer, thank you, and I appreciate the work you do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the committee, economic development? Questions or comments from the public? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
Well, my name hasn't changed. Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. Now, I know. I haven't moved my precinct in. I had Pam, if I may call you Pam, consult with me on the grant for making the town a little more ADA compliant. I'm glad someone's listening, and it's a process, and I may not live to see those railings I'm looking for, but the next person will. Also today, I got a call from someone who's looking for industrial property in Stoughton. I told him I'm not for sale. He asked if I knew any other industrial property that he'd like to develop in Stoughton, and I didn't, so I directed him to you.
I'll expect the call.
So, well, but I did have a caveat. I told him that if you couldn't help him, you might know who could. And my last item, this thing is blowing cold air. I can't reach the off button, but I might be able to hear a little bit better if, yeah, the off button is over there. Thank you. Now I may hear half of what you have to say.
Any other questions or comments from the public on the economic development department budget? No, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Next item, building and code enforcement, item C.
Mr. Chairman, would you mind taking one department out of order? Since the department is here.
Which department do you want to go with?
Planning?
Planning, sure, we'll jump to planning.
Page 17 in your budget book. You wanna get it back?
So with me tonight is our town planner, Bill Roth. Bill has been on for a few months now, almost.
It'll be a year next month.
A year. Yeah, so Bill's been on for a So we were very lucky to find Bill. He's a very seasoned veteran in the planning community. He worked for almost 20 years in Fairhaven, did a lot of good projects there. He's doing a lot of good projects as we speak now. You'll see the warrant has some zoning articles on it, very well vetted, solid zoning articles. Bill's budget is pretty simple. Bill's here to answer any technical questions. But his budget went up a total of 3.2%, so it's a pretty modest increase. Expenses went up 0.7%, negligible to talk about. And then Bill's salary, get in front of this one, John. That's the red box again.
Right there,
Yep, so there you go. So,
and down here.
so this, remember, was discussed last year. We hired Bill at $110,000 with the understanding, it was mutually agreed upon, that in July, he would get that 2.5% increase. Now, you can disagree with that, and you might be well warranted in it. And I believe the town manager has a different perspective as we speak now. But at that point in time, he was under the impression that he was going to get a raise on July 1st with another 2.5%. If not, we would have hired him at the higher salary of 112, whatever it was, roughly around 112, not 110. But that was agreed upon, and I know the committee was totally not in favor of that process last year. hiring somebody within 3 months of the next year, like, why are we doing that? They're getting a whole new raise. I get it. I don't think we'll be moving forward in that direction. I know the current town manager is not in agreement with that. So there needs to be some policy formalized with a time frame. Maybe it's 6 months, whatever it is. But right now, that's not the policy for the town manager to do that. So with that said, it's 110. He got a raise to 112 change on July 1st, and then he's got the 2.5% on top of that, the 115. Again, this position, this is a classic example where we lost a town planner before Bill because he got more money somewhere else. We had to post this position. If you remember, I did the research on what other towns were posting, because that's where I go first. If you can find a town that's currently posting a position, it's the best source of information because that's who you're competing with. Canton was posting 108. I remember it like it was yesterday. We had to be at 110. I mean, you could argue we should have been a little higher, but we put it a little bit higher, and we were lucky to land Bill because there was nobody else. We don't have people applying to municipal positions, at least skilled municipal positions. I wish we did. I don't know what happened over the last few years, but we just don't get it. We're lucky to have Bill. When I applied for the assistant town engineer, 40 people applied 13 years ago. I don't even know how I got the job, to be honest with you, but I did. This gentleman, we're lucky now because we're getting maybe 2 or 3 people applying per job. And you're lucky if you get one that's qualified, and Bill's way more than qualified. And I'll give credit to, actually, Pam. Is Pam still there?
Didn't mean she got out of it.
Yeah, she's okay. The Bridge of Gap, Pam and Craig, again, Craig, the quiet guy in the corner, looking to get a promotion. Not him, but I'm looking to get him a promotion. Took on the planning duties. Yes, there was a small stipend involved, like it's warranted, but they kept the ship floating. And then Bill came in and was able to just continue launching the ship, doing real planning duties with all the zoning articles he's working on. He's got zoning stuff planned for the next 2 years. We have a priority list generated. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Bill. You want to add anything to that?
No, I'm just here to discuss the budget, but as far as the planning stuff, actually, I have enough planning articles probably for about the next 5 to 6 years that we, working with the building commissioner, the development community, it's like I try to look at our, example, our use table. The building commissioner, based on interpretations and legal advice, under this category, we also include this use, this use, this use. It's handwritten, and I got his book, so now I have it handwritten. Well, we're gonna codify that in the code in future years. We have a lot of zoning, if you recall. I did we called it the low-hanging fruit, those little spot zones that, half of it is business and it's a house. I asked town meeting members, I got about 3 or 4 town meeting members that sent me, look at this area, we've got to hold this, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're going to strategically do it because I don't think 8 zoning articles at 2/3 majority, 2/3 is going to go. So we're going to take them, at piecemeal at a time and methodically go through. That's what we've done this year with the zoning articles. So, but I'm here to discuss the budget.
Okay. Questions or comments from the committee on the planning department budget? Mark Struck. Question or comment?
On the consultant fees line,
Yes.
you have 50,000, and you haven't spent anything for a while. So why we still need that?
We desperately need it. I knew this was a question that was going to be asked. Last year, yes, we didn't spend anything because guess what? I wasn't here, and literally Pam and Craig, the assistant engineer and the economic development director, were literally keeping the ship afloat. They were not aggressively. There were several planning projects that we had grants for and already had articles for that we had to extend and got extensions to the state. I got in here, and it's the Campanelli and the Route 27 We've gotten those extensions. Campanelli's done. You're going to see you see a zoning article. Route 27, we have to have it done and paid for by the end of this year. This year, it does not show on the November. We just now, through the state, have a Tier 2 complete streets project that requires $38,000. So we are going to commit, and Craig, and I've been working with Craig on that, and we've gotten it through, we've sent the paperwork, because we just finally got the state signatures. So we will be encumbering the $38,000, and I actually have a $12,000, it will be resent to me, because I only had $12,000 for consulting help to take our 1999 subdivision regulations, and we're going to be revising and updating our subdivision regulations. So I would say by the end of March, we will have encumbered and committed exactly all 50,000, and for this current year. I'll just tell you what I have for next year.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question.
Huh?
No, it's
Oh.
going to have enough for next year.
What I have for next year is, regards to the 25 funds, there's several projects that are going to require consulting assistance. One of them is, we've been in contact, we will be getting new FEMA flood maps. That will be coming out in, I think the draft is sometime this summer. Well, they, in doing that, will require significant changes, because we have several zoning bylaw sections, which is our aquifer protection, our wetlands, our flood hazard, and our watershed districts, which are all from the 70s and 80s, which do not meet with the FEMA maps and the FEMA, what they call the streets model bylaw. So we are going to have to take stuff that is 40 and 50 years old and revise that and make it coordinate to comply with current FEMA federal regulations. That is, I will let you know, that is way outside the scope of my knowledge, skill, and ability. I bet Mark and Craig might have some with engineering, but it's really outside of the scope of what we can deal with in-house. That's, it's going to be a significant project.
If I can pick up on that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm so glad to have Bill, because he's got that capability to manage those projects. When I came in, and I think I've spoken to Mr. Gito about this and other people in the past, that when you look at these we have the Wetlands Protection Act, then we have the Wetlands Bylaw for the conservation, then we have a zoning wetlands bylaw that was probably in place before the conservation had their bylaw and before the Wetlands Protection Act came into play in the state. So we have like these three things contradicting each other, and the one we have in the zoning is not the right spot for it. The ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, shouldn't be dealing with wetlands issues. We have a esteemed conservation commission in an agent that know how to deal with it with the most current regulations. So the fact that Bill's working on this and revising all that, it's great.
So that's going to be, that's our #1 priority and project. In addition, the planning board would like to work on design standards. We have site plan review, but it just, you know, they're very ambiguous. So, you know, you need to provide landscaping, and what the planning board and discussing with them is, we'd like to look at doing, as I say, adding another tool in the toolbox for the planning board to make the town better. And so we want to look at adding comprehensive design review, low impact development, really bring the town and the design that we want and the things, codify it so we have teeth, one more tool in the toolbox to get the things that we want. I always tell people, if you don't like the project that we have permitted, don't blame the planning board, blame the rules. Well, I don't like some of the projects and some of the landscaping and design that some of the projects that I've had for the last year. I want the tools in the toolbox to be able to require these things, and the planning board does too. This takes time, and so that's the other thing that we're going to look at working on, and that's probably going to be a multi-year project. And then there's a whole host of other things that we can look at doing. And I will let you know, some years, this year, we're going to use all 50. Next year, we're probably going to use a lot of it. The year after, well, you know, due to capacity and whatnot, we might not. But having that resource allows us to go and do it. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Committee of the Planning Department. Dave, Laura, do you have a question?
Yeah, through you, Vaughn. And this question's to Mark, actually. So I noticed that it's almost becoming like a little theme with the explanation as to how you shop or to be comparable, to get the comparables. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying to be competitive so that we get the best and brightest, you know, to work at Stoughton. I appreciate that. But in the private sector, the way I've always understood it, it's you get paid based commensurate with your experience, or you see sometimes a job posting where it's a range, it's between this and that. But in reality, doesn't a posted job become at the discretion of the town administrator to say, okay, based on your interview, I think this is where you should be paid, because the advertised number might be far different than what they actually get hired at. So I understand the need to get fresh data, but could it be so fresh that you don't really know what they actually got paid?
I mean, well, you know what the market is. You know, for example, like the Canton job, we're competing with Canton to hire a town planner. If he applied to Canton.
I did.
Oh, okay.
Right, but do you know how much they got paid?
I will let you, I actually, you know, I'm not going to defend, I'm going to let you know. I applied for, when I left Taunton, working for mayors, by the way, is very tenuous. Yeah, it's
This
the
isn't
wind.
tenuous?
Oh, it's very winds of fate, you know, I can tell you
I'm
that.
not working on it.
Oh, I know. When I applied for jobs, I will let you know, there were 4 jobs that were in this region: Stoughton, Canton, Rockland, and Cohasset. Every single position had been open for 6 to 12 months, which, and I know that a lot of my colleagues are a little older than I am, and there's a whole bunch of people that retired.
Yeah.
I took this job and did, because of a whole host of factors, pay being one, development services being a team. Rather ironic, the grant manager that worked for me under at Office of Economic and Community Development in Taunton, who I recommended for the Canton job, got $3,000 over advertised max price.
Oh, okay. So, but it is.
So he actually got offered, he got paid more than the salary range.
Right, so that you don't actually know on an
I know that for a fact.
Right, but the advertised rate is not going to be an exact number. It's going to be either up or down from that number depending on factors that we don't have.
So, and I know that the Cohasset job
Yeah.
Was paid
Yeah.
over the advertised.
Okay. Well,
Are you,
So I'm
are you
just-
good with that answer, Dave?
yeah, I am. Yeah.
You have a comment?
Yes, I do.
John Angelino with a comment.
I have a comment. I know Mark tried to head it off, but I'm gonna give the comment. It wasn't the finance committee that just didn't want that. Finance committee did not give that extra money last year, and we left it at the 110. Understandable, you had to hire at a higher rate, and of course, the position hadn't been filled, so money was still there to accommodate. It was town meeting who voted to keep it at that. And the way, and this is how I take it. Town meeting said, no, that's the money he's gonna get. And after that was done, management decided, we don't care what town meeting said, we're doing it anyway. And now you're building on top of that. And it's gonna come up again in another budget, believe me. That's really an unacceptable answer, that we didn't care what town meeting said, we did what we wanted to do. We asked you, you said no, too bad we did it. And I take that as an affront to the committee and to town meeting, that they ignore the wishes of the body on what they wanted done there. And I just don't think that is appropriate. That's all, that's my comment.
Well, I mean, I respect your thoughts and comments on it, and I think the hiring procedure, like we mentioned, it's different than what you're saying, needs to be looked at. But for like reasons we just mentioned, what other towns are doing to be competitive, do we not hire the best guy, or woman, for the position for $2,000? Do you not do, the town manager, we
You
vote
did
bot-
hire,
we-
you
we
did
vote
hire
bottom-
him
we
at the
vote bottom
110.
line budgets. So it's up to the town manager. And again, I don't want to defend the town manager, because I'm not here to defend the town manager. I'm just saying, the way the charter is written, the town manager can hire people at higher salaries. But I do,
But town
I
meeting
do
is,
think we should.
town meeting
try
is a
this.
legislative body on what you're spending. And they were very clear that was the salary for this year, for the 24, was 110. And you tell us right here, that was ignored, they did it anyway, and now we're going on top of that again.
Well, correct me if I'm
So-
wrong, I mean, I think town meeting votes the bottom line. They don't vote for individual.
Mark,
lines.
I'm not gonna get into, when you give us this detail, that's what they're agreeing to. And that was a specific point that was made, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Mr. Lurie?
Yeah,
Follow
through
up.
you, you,
Let's
Vaughn.
stay relevant to this, all
Yeah,
right? All right,
it is
thank you.
relevant. It is relevant because it was just talked about.
Making sure we're staying
It's-
relevant, but thank you
Stay
very much.
relevant to the conversation.
Thank you.
There's truth on actually both statements because, as we talked about last night, the only way in which you're really going to tie the hands of a town manager is if you have 2 votes per department, one for salaries and one for capital. There's no other way, because that's where they get the money from. They take the money from the bottom of the budget and bring it to the top, because we're voting the entire department budget.
You don't take it out.
We only vote once for each department, which is to Mark's point. However, going back, and I think at least a few of us on this committee remember when there was an over-the-top, where 13 positions were done that way, all in 1 year, where immediately after our town meeting vote on July 1st, all the same kind of thing happened across that many.
I remember
And,
what?
and that was the kind of sting on your point that caused us to take, where we were writing letters inside the warrant about it, and it was over the top. So I don't know whether or not it's well, if it only happened with 1 or 2 departments, okay, maybe we should just accept that, because the structure and the process is correct. We only vote once per department, and at the same time, we take serious offense when they do it for so many departments that it's just over the top. So there's some number in which it's palatable and another where it may not be, but
Thank you.
that's an opinion. But I'm just saying that happened, that did happen.
Thank you for the follow-up on that, Mr. Lurie. Do we have any questions or comments, any additional questions or comments from the committee on the planning department budget? From the committee? None. Do we have any questions or comments from the public on the planning? Excuse me. I'm getting to that right now. From the public on the planning department budget. Yes, please identify yourself for the record, Lisa.
Lisa Lyons, Precinct 2. Through you, Vaughn, to either Bill or Mark. Just a quick question on, you were talking about the FEMA wetlands needing to be updated, and our town needs to be updated to those standards. Quick question, will that affect residential homeowners on their lands and therefore potentially their insurance rates for being in a flood zone, just for the general public who heard that?
The FEMA, I worked in a community that was on the water, which has a lot of flood zones compared to here. The federal government has the federal, FEMA it's the federal, it's federally insured flood insurance, the National Flood Insurance Program. If the community wishes to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, then they need to adopt these model regulations and the FEMA maps. We have FEMA maps. We have, as a community, has adopted them ever since they've been around. Whenever FEMA updates them, we have to go through, because they're in zoning, that's the way they're done, we have to update the maps. Those maps could change and add or subtract floodplains and could affect individual properties. So, you know, and there's a public hearing process on, the maps will be out and available, and people can come look at them. They'll also, I think, they'll be able to have them online to see if their flood zone has changed. I don't think there's a tremendous dramatic change around here. I don't see that. The one thing that would affect you or a homeowner is if town meeting does not adopt the FEMA maps per the federal government, then town meeting is saying, we do not wish to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and then you will not be able to get flood insurance. So it's a carrot. It's not actually. It's a big stick. It's not a carrot. It's a big stick. So
What's the time frame for that last part?
I believe the maps are going to be coming out in July. That's kind of where we are, and we will have to adopt them in town meeting May 25.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the response. Any other questions or comments from the public on the planning department budget? And let's try to keep the questions and comments related to the planning department budget. Any other questions or comments? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the
Cynthia
record.
Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. I'm still going to comment. The same people that voted no to an increase in salary would be the same people screaming their heads off, why don't we have a planner because of these FEMA maps? So either way, we can't win.
Thank you very much for that comment. Any of the questions or comments from the public on the planning department budget? Hearing none, we will go to the next budget, building and code enforcement.
Page 25.
25 in your budget.
Page 14, you say?
25.
You're very close, Dave, very close.
Do we take an average on that, Dave?
Yeah. Over under.
You going low sugar or what?
Still young.
I'm all set, about you?
I'm good. I was told not to say a lot.
Perfect. Okay, you want to jump to questions and comments then?
Nice try.
Okay, perfect. Is that,
I let this guy,
is that
I told him
it?
about his line item, so I don't think department heads should say about their own opinions.
Do you want to skip the presentation and jump straight to questions?
Yeah, my presentation is here I am. You got my numbers, so.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the committee on the building and code enforcement budget? Joel Wolf.
Joel Wolk, Finance Committee member, Precinct 7. Thought I'd throw that in. I'm glad to meet you. You have assistant inspectors for electrical and inspector for plumbing and heating. And both of those are part-time?
Yes.
And I know that Gary Alacqua, is he the electrical inspector
He's the
now?
electrical.
Who's the plumbing inspector now?
Scott Angelos.
Oh, okay, all right. Does your group do plan reviews before issuing building permits?
I do all plan review.
What about your plumbing and heating people?
No. They're part-time, so they're in the office from 8 to 9 in the morning, basically setting their schedules for inspections for the day, and then they're gone.
So what do you do so nobody really reviews the plumbing and heating plans of any project?
I do most of what I can. Well, Scott gives me the information I need. It depending upon the project. If it's just a homeowner project, it's not a big deal.
Let's take a hypothetical, okay? Let's say hypothetically the town of Stoughton wanted to build a new elementary school. Just hypothetically, okay? And it's a pretty good-sized building, all right? Who would do the planning review, the inspection reviews for that building?
Well, so not so hypothetically, the fire building that we have going up right now, we have Pomeroy working there. So that review would be done by people we hire for the town. I do building review, and everything we get, every inspection we do, we get a controlled construction affidavit.
I understand that, yeah.
So we don't have it in the budget for our inspectors to review.
All right, so you're basically counting on, say, very large projects to come by and say, you want some additional money to hire a consultant to do a plan review? Or you just don't do it?
No, that's, every project that comes in is a large project. Controlled construction affidavits go through that. That leaves everything on the architect, the engineers, whoever we require that from.
Okay. No, it's something that happened in the high school, that's okay.
Okay. Any questions or
It's
comments?
very expensive.
Any questions or comments from the committee on building and code enforcement budget?
I got a couple.
John Enzavino.
John Angelino, Finance Committee.
Does this mean you're last? You always go last, right? So
Well, he tends to leave me out until I give him a nudge and say.
Giving everyone else an opportunity.
I mean, we've gone over the things about the, with the comparables and the increases. Just to make a point, like with the code enforcement manager. Now, it was noted this was a new hire, but he was also going to 40 hours instead of the 35, which of course is gonna increase because, it's going in 11.7. And you've gone over how I know the inspector or the commissioner is going up a sizable amount as well. But I had a couple of questions outside of that now. You have, on the parking enforcement stipend, it just says it's new,
Right.
but who's it for?
Yep. All right, so going back to the position you just mentioned, that position, code enforcement manager, was hired at 35 hours per week.
Yeah.
For code enforcement. That went up to, that got hired at a higher position, 78,000. The range was posted from 72 to 78. We got hired at 78, the 79 reflects the 2.5% increase. That same person would be getting the stipend, because now they'll be working an extra 5 hours. They're gonna come in early in the morning when a lot of these parking violations are occurring, probably 7:30, something like that.
All right, so the
So an extra
the
5 hours
parking
per week.
enforcement is for the code enforcement manager?
Exactly.
Okay,
So 40 hours total for that person.
okay. Well, because I took it with the 40 instead of 35 was part of the reason that the thing went up that high, but that's all right. And then, on your expenses, there used to be a $7,000 stipend for the, seal, the sealer of weights and measures. And that got rolled over into a base pay in the Board of Health. I know there's a lot of, believe me, I go through and try to check. But you left the supplies in this budget.
Yeah.
But if the sealer of weights and measures went into the Board of Health, why are the supplies still back here?
You can move that into the board.
All right, but I mean,
Yeah, no,
I mean, they
I'm not
didn't
gonna
go,
say-
it was just a,
It's,
that's a comment question, like,
You can
where
go-
you moved the other one, this one stayed, I was just curious if there was a particular reason for it.
I mean, you could also move a half FTE from that person to the building department.
It was just, when it moved, I didn't know why everything didn't move with
I
it.
try, I don't like breaking up the FTEs, but if I have to, I will.
No, I'd rather you didn't.
So,
I really would rather you didn't.
I mean, on that, just to kind of go through, piggyback on what John said, in the building department salary, a couple years ago, was $12,000 consultant line for, we used to pay the
Like, because we were
state.
paying the state.
We're paying the state to do it. Now, we've actually had an employee here, from the Board of Health, who's actually went and get the certification to become a sealer of weights and measures, so we have them in-house. It was a stipend for $7,000, but the agreement was if you get certified, then it becomes part of your base pay, which we did for that person in the Board of
Right,
Health.
and that was mentioned, that was footnoted, you
Yeah.
get certified and everything, so that,
Yeah.
but, all right, no, I was just curious where the position kind of moved, but the supplies didn't go with
Is
it.
this a,
I mean, that's fine.
something that you'd like to see moved around next year? in the budget? Sounds like it.
I didn't know,
I'm willing to work.
I didn't know if there was a reason it stayed here, you know, maybe it had to stay here for some reason, I don't know.
It doesn't bother me either way where that.
Yeah, no problem, that's all, I just noticed it didn't go with it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments from the committee on the building and code enforcement budget? Okay, any questions or comments from the public on the building and code enforcement budget?
Yes.
Mr. Gito, please identify yourself for the record.
Through you, to Mr. Wolf, I would like to ask him 2 questions, if I might, in that the questions relate to his question and comment afterwards, which was that, that in the school, the high school project, things should have been done differently. I'd like to know what those things were, and he indicated that there was a substantial change in cost. And I think that we should know about that so that when we deal with other projects, we save the money that he suggested.
I'm going to be honest with everyone here, this is not really relevant to the budget.
Well, yes and no.
But I'll allow Mr. Wolf to answer this if he's willing to answer this.
On the high school project, the plans were
Little leeway.
submitted, and they were sort of reviewed by the plumbing inspector and the inspection department. During the course of construction, the plumbing inspector came on site to do his inspection, saw what was being put in, disagreed that what was being put in met code, came back and issued a warning saying that you have to change it because in my opinion it doesn't meet code. The contractor, the construction manager, at the cost of the town, had to tear out the work that had been installed and install it in accordance with the way the plumbing inspector felt it should be installed. It was an interpretation problem. As for the budget,
Now I understand your question.
okay, as for the budget, I was kind of hoping to see that be a line item for consultants in your expenses, so that when you got to a point where there was a very large project coming down, be it a town project or be it a regular commercial project, you would have the ability to go out, and there's about 3 or 4, you probably know them, companies that specialize in code reviews, and use them so that this wouldn't happen again. That actually has something to do with the budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf, for bringing it back to the budget. I was concerned we were going to
Oh,
wander
yeah.
off.
I would never do that.
Thank you
More
so
of an
much for that.
independent review from,
Yes.
Well, I think it's in the benefit of the town to do it, so it's odd that I'm asking for more money to be put into a budget, but that's the way I'm looking at it. As it turns, I'm probably gonna talk to TJ Recupero and say for the new school, if it goes forward, to part of their budget to include some
An
money in
independent
their
review.
budget as part of that project to do that kind of review. We did it, I worked on a project where that happened, it was very successful, and the building inspector was very grateful.
Mr. Gito, that was your one question?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Did you have a 2
I
questions?
asked 2 questions.
Okay.
2 questions were answered.
Perfect.
And I appreciate your allowing me to ask the question. I appreciate the response. And
No
I
problem.
think we need to think about that response.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Ken, do you have a
Those
question?
are presidents over there,
identify yourself.
oh, I'm sorry, Chuck Collins. Who are their presidents over there? The consultant or the town building inspector, plumbing inspector?
I was the plumbing inspector.
No, I
that-
don't understand that, but who would have president over there?
Yeah, who would have authority over who?
Who,
Oh, the plumbing inspector?
Well,
That's-
if,
no,
That's the
like,
building commissioner.
no, but you just said that the town plumber overruled.
The plumbing inspector came on site, declared that what was being installed was, in his opinion, not in accordance with code, and demanded that it be taken out and put back in again
Yeah.
the way he wanted to see it.
his question is does the hired person you're referring to become the final say, the authority?
No,
over the-
it does not. And the projects I've worked on where they've had an outside consultant do it, basically the outside consultant comes in, they do a significant code review of the plans. They go to the building inspector and say, here are the areas that we think that are weak. And at that point in time, in a consultation with the mechanical engineer and the plumbing engineer, you might make corrections to the plans, and all this additional cost will be completely avoided.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Building code enforcement? No? Any questions or comments from the public on building and code enforcement?
Quick question.
Yes, Mr. Mullen, please identify yourself for the record.
Sure, Bob Mullen, 19 Clover Lane, Stoughton, Mass.
Thank you for that.
Where?
United States of America.
What's the zip code?
I'll get to that in a minute. I'm just looking at these different titles, building commissioner, building inspector, code enforcement manager. I saw that the building inspector's only half FTE for this year coming up.
We have a part-time building inspector.
Okay, they're not gonna go full-time later on?
He's the same as plumbing and electrical, no, they're all.
Okay, so are you the building commissioner now?
Yes.
That's a new title?
No, he's always been building commissioner.
You've always been building commissioner?
The new title is the one you just referenced. the
Building inspector?
That was from last year's town meeting.
Yes, that one in FY '24. You gotta know that.
Okay. Is enough work for all these people to do all this stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the main reasons, it's a good question, but one of the he's very modest, he won't say it, but I'll say it, is Jack was always out doing inspections. And me, personally, I like to keep the building permits moving in a predictable fashion, like our mission statement says. And we couldn't, with Jack going out and looking at insulation all day long and beams and whatever he looks at when he goes out there. He'd have to come in, he'd actually work many extra hours just to get the building permits to move.
But I got him out.
He got it out. He did. I mean, he didn't delay things out of your purview, but to be honest with you, with a town this size, with the amount of permits, I mean, very soon, I cannot wait till the online permitting comes forward. You'll see exactly how many permits we have, wiring, plumbing, building. You'll see the numbers. For a town our size, there's no way one person can do it all.
Okay.
That's all I have, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any other questions or comments from the public on the building and code enforcement budget? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item, Board of Health budget.
Thanks, Jack. Page 40 in your book, in case you were wondering. Page 40. 40 for you, Dave. 40. We don't get any assistance in getting cabs to do our books. We're not going to pay ourselves.
You never asked? Did you ask for that? Sure.
Just took away our budget.
I like this tabs.
Well, it's a lot easier.
Who does it, Sector? Who does it, Sector or you?
I hope not.
So do you want to present something, or
Yeah.
do you want us to just ask questions? What do you want to do?
Well, I'll go over it a little bit. You're probably wondering why I'm standing up for Board of Health. I don't work directly for the Board of Health, but as part of the duties in the development services, you know, they're the door next door to my office. We work very closely together, and I'm very familiar with their budget, so I thought it was a good idea to get involved in the presentation here. So, the only big changes to their budget, really the assistant sanitarian, code enforcement, who now has a stipend rolled into the salary, which was discussed earlier, so you see that before you. There's some increase for longevity, which is just part of the SPAEA contractual obligations. And other than that, the expenses are flat this year, so 0% there, so just any questions beyond that?
Great. Any questions or comments from the committee on the Board of Health budget? Any questions, John Zavino?
Just one, yeah, John Zavino, Finance Committee. Mark, there's just a thing, after all the salaries, it just says assistant sanitarian, code enforcement, half of salary.
Yeah, and that's a good question.
Could you explain it? I
Yep.
think there was one in the other one, I missed it. But.
Yeah, so that note's been in there for a couple of years. So since
Does it go back to the grant?
it goes back to the revolving account.
Okay.
Yeah, so Board of Health has a revolving account that they pay for things like hazardous waste out of, their food inspections. They can also pay for salaries of these.
Yep.
of that position written right into their code. So since half that position is technically Board of Health duties, strictly Board of Health duties, half can come out of the consultant.
I thought that's what it just seemed odd the way it was.
That's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. Any other questions or comments from the committee, the Board of Health budget? Okay. Questions or comments from the public on the Board of Health budget? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to the next item.
Ooh, just a big one.
The, I don't know, let's jump to
Let's
the town moderator.
Page 4.
Not enough money.
Page 4.
More cash.
And then maybe we don't.
Should be at least $500,000 in that budget.
We gotta put these in with triple spaces so we fill in the page.
What I did was,
You have to buy him a uniform.
it's a little handout.
Sorry, nothing the night of the meeting.
Yeah. Well, this is pretty much the same that you see on the big spreadsheet, but I put the numbers I actually need in there and why I'm spending that money. If you don't know me, my name is Bob Mullen, the town moderator. Good to see everybody. The bottom line is, the current budget sheet that you have in your hands shows that in FY 2025, I need 3,300. But in reality, I need a little more than that. I need 3828. The biggest cost in my whole budget is advertising, and I broke down the advertising survey to see what to spend the money on. Thanks to the procurement department here in the town of Stoughton, they have, starting in July, the new fiscal year of July FY 2025, they were able to secure the cost to go in the Suburban Shopper for a half-page ad from $189 to $149. So, but I run our ads on the Suburban Shopper for 2 weeks in a row, and also do the same thing for legal purposes in the Patriot Ledger. And the Patriot Ledger is, even though it's a lot cheaper,
Very cheap.
yeah, $12.85 compared to Suburban Shopper. That's just the cost of doing business, get the word out. And I also advertise, in Town Crier, which is free. I comply with the open meeting law. But the biggest cost is Suburban Shopper. But I think to me it's important because it goes to every household in town. Not that we get thousands of people to show up to our meetings, but at least they're aware that those meetings are taking place.
You make the effort.
Make the effort. So that's my real needs here. I'm going to give you what I'm looking for. I hope you feel benevolent enough to provide me with this budget. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Where are you at now? Sorry.
Pardon me?
I didn't get.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, he's on the back.
Sorry, Mark. Anybody else from the committee, the finance committee?
Can you please email a copy of that too?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
We'll-
You want the public to get that?
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. If they're interested.
Do we have any,
We got them done here.
Okay.
Okay.
do we have questions or comments from the committee on the moderator's budget? Chet Collins, please.
Mr. Chairman, Chuck Collins.
Hi, Chet, how are you tonight?
I'm well, thanks. On this contracted services for daycare, how many applicants, or not applicants, but
I mean, children?
children?
It depends. I'm only,
I mean, the last meeting.
the last meeting, well, it cost like $13.85, I think it was, or 13 something. What we spent, 1,038, excuse me. I think it depends. I think there was probably 6 on average. And they leave early, it's not the whole night, because they want to get their children home, usually by 9:30. Yeah, it all depends on how many nights it's built, but also we contract with the YMCA, and they have to provide 2 adults. So we're paying for 2 adults, even if it ends up with 1 child at night. There has to be 2 adults on the site. So it gets a little expensive.
Believe me, we bring it up.
It's working, it's not perfect. This is for, for mothers and fathers that they want to come to town meeting, volunteer their services as a town meeting rep, and they have someplace to safely bring their child.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the committee on the moderator's budget? Mark Struck, do you have a question?
Oh, Mark,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I just wanted to make sure that the increase that you're requesting from us is strictly just advertising line?
Well, no, see, I looked at what I was given as my budget, and I was trying to make a little sense of it, because I don't have access to the system there, units. So I don't input these numbers, I don't update these numbers. You know, so
So like which lines are you, which is it?
I wrote down, I typed up the exact same lines. I have nothing in wages, if you look up top. Right, so I should say, I work closely with the town clerk's office, and I do have Samantha Rigo as my executive assistant. Yeah, she types up the minutes for us at meetings. And also, so her salary, her part-time hours comes out of the clerk's office budget, not in my budget. It just works all payroll.
Any other questions or comments from the committee
Well, Mark
on
was
the
asking what's the changes.
Oh,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no problem. Did you clarify the changes exactly? I didn't know if you were.
Well, the changes are pretty much, I apologize, I didn't have access to the sheet. If you look at my, I have the dues for $55 instead of 200.
Right, that went down.
Yeah, advertising, it's really 1943.
Yeah.
Conferences and, daycare was 1,400. It'll be increased this year for sure. They had it on the original
Yes.
sheet
Yeah, they
there.
already had 14.
Yeah. Conferences, I'm trying to get precinct chairs, there's some more conferences. Usually by the end of the town meeting, we're all exhausted, we don't want to go anywhere, it's just be home, It's good to get some education on what's going on, almost like continuing education on what's going on in different town meetings across the state. So
So you're only going up 2 lines and down 1. If I'm looking at it correctly.
yeah, pretty much. It's only an increase of a couple $100.
Yeah, it's not much.
Yeah. I think I'm one of the smallest budgets in the whole town.
I just wanted to make sure which lines are.
Yep, it's okay.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, to you, Vaughn, I don't know if this is a housekeeping thing or not. You have the contracted services, the daycare. I could understand $1,038 on the fall town meeting that we just had, right? But we didn't approve anything in FY '24. The town meeting never approved money in that column, in that row, so I don't know why there was no money set aside for that. And then if you look at the FY '23, it looks like you didn't have any daycare services at all for the annual town meeting last year. Because it would have been, last year would have been the FY '23 budget, but you didn't use any daycare.
Well, last year would have been FY '24, right?
No, because it was in May of FY '23.
Okay, well, we did have in the last annual town meeting,
There was, so this is sort of housekeeping, really.
I don't have
It's
access to
housekeeping.
this.
That's, yeah, I just want to bring it up like that.
Yeah, I'm sure as time goes on, things will be improved.
Mary Jane, Chancellor.
Mary Jane Martin, internal auditor, I believe that when it shows the negative, it's paid from another department. So
No, there's no
always-
negative. There's no-
Of the zero, there's
The
no
zero
number.
is paid by another?
It was paid by another department, it was roughly the same amount.
Okay, okay, I guess, I don't know which department would have paid
It
for
was either
moderator.
town clerk or town manager.
Okay.
That's not a transfer?
Well, actually,
No, it's part of town
No,
meeting.
his
it's out of
yeah.
the
line
clerk's
used to
office.
be in the town
Is,
clerk.
the clerk has responsibilities in the same activity as the town manager, as the moderator.
As you mentioned, the employee in the town clerk's office acts as his secretary for town meeting, and that's paid out of the clerk's office.
clerk's office.
All right, but in this case, we started a different practice of you putting the money into his department instead. that's a change. Okay.
If it doesn't work that way, that's
No,
fine.
I just
Whatever
wanted-
works the best for
It
everybody.
just, I didn't understand why it was inconsistent, that's all.
Okay. And the questions, comments from the committee on the town moderator's budget? Okay, any questions or comments from the public on the town moderator's budget? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Chair of Municipal Operations Committee.
Thank you for being chair, Cynthia, we appreciate that.
I'm glad we're still having, each of the standing committees is still having a secretary. I used to have to do that, and it gets to be difficult to run a meeting and take the minutes. The other thing is that in today's Globe, it mentioned the Patriot Ledger doesn't even have home delivery. They mail it. So I don't know how effective any advertising in the Patriot Ledger is.
Well, it's
Legal.
It's the law.
It's legal.
Yeah.
And I can suggest spending more money for the Brockton Enterprise, because you may be aware that when they had a legal notice in the Brockton Enterprise about the closing of New England Cyanide, exactly one person showed up to speak, me.
I saw you on TV.
And everyone I spoke to said, well,
They
we
didn't
don't
know.
get, nobody gets the paper. This committee can't solve the issue. The suburban shopper, I know, isn't legal, but it does, we can at least say, it went to your address whether you opened it or not.
Yeah.
And it didn't require you to spend any money for a newspaper. But it's getting harder and harder. We laugh about how few people show up, although this room tends to negate that statement. But the fact is, it's getting harder and harder to let people know what's happening. And you can't solve that, but you should be aware that the money that we're spending doesn't seem to be prompting too much public
anticipation.
yeah, representation. Just from town meeting, you get the impression that many people haven't even heard of this stuff. And that's a sorry state of affairs, and as I said, there's nothing this committee can do about it.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Angelino, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Inokian. Ron Angelino, Finance Committee, Vice Chairman, Precinct 4. Just a comment on that. The reason, Juan and I had discussed this, and the reason we chose to do the shopper was just for that reason. It gets in every home. But for the legal requirements, we do the Patriot Ledger, and when you look at the cost, it's a no-brainer. It's a great deal they give us, and we put them in, we run them 2 weeks, you know, to get them out there, so it costs us $27.50, you know, or whatever, $25.70 for each meeting. And it meets the requirements for bond counsel that they were advertised, but the shopper gets out to everybody. And as Mr. Muller mentioned, they do go into the town crier, which people may or may not see it. It's online. She publishes it in a number of places, and it's on the website. So, I mean, you get the information out the best you can, and it's just a different world we're living in today.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public? Town moderator budget?
I just had a quick question to you, just for you. If you don't,
Regarding
okay.
the
It is,
budget?
yeah.
Okay.
There's a $528 difference between what's being requested. Is it on us to find the $528?
Maybe later.
When it's time to vote.
If we're gonna be
We'll
doing
have to look at
that.
where to get it. All right.
We'll take it away from you.
Mark's got plenty.
All right. Any other questions? Any other questions or comments from the public on the moderator budget? Hearing none, we'll go to the Finance Committee budget.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful evening.
It's on page 7.
It's the Finance Committee budget.
Can we have whoever put the budget together speak on it?
We probably could, because it wasn't.
We didn't do it.
Wasn't
You guys
anybody,
have
we had it.
all you know.
Thank you. Mike, you want to address this one? Because we didn't do it.
finance committee budget?
Yeah, we didn't put it together, so.
I had requested, I'll say it publicly right now, I had requested to see about possibly getting an increase on the reserve fund, because the amount that's in there is really not enough for any true municipal emergency if something were to happen. Not really a lot in there, but we'll see what the money is, I guess. I think Mr. Tisdale's the one who actually put the budget in here, so he
Oh,
should
yeah, you
speak
don't
to
have
it.
ours, yeah, sure.
All right. I don't have my notes for this one. I wasn't ready. I will be full disclosure, I think the finance committee chairman, we had discussions, he was looking to ask the town manager for an increase for the reason you just explained, which is probably a good reason. And through the budget season, everything got very tight, as it usually does, and there wasn't flexibility to put it up at that point in time. Now, as we move through this process, the budgeting process, you know, revenues change, different things increase, hopefully, and that could be an option we increase. Because if there is a large issue, there's probably not enough money there to address it. If there's a huge water main break, something like that, you don't have enough money there. So that's something I would support going up on. I would just say that might be one of the last things you should decide on as you get through the process to see as the state revenues come in and the cherry sheets and as you get the final revenue documentation ready. So just park it. If we have extra money, that's maybe a spot to put it.
That would be something we'd have to deal with later on when there's numbers available, but in all honesty, I think it would be good to increase that, because if some crazy event happens and the finance committee reserve is needed,
So I'm looking at.
not a lot of money
Mr.
there.
Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Look at your actuals, it says you spent zero.
right?
And now you want to increase
I
it?
don't-
I'm just joking.
You want to be the one to explain to the public why something can't be repaired, you do it, okay? But if
I
some,
think that number has to be scrubbed, because I believe we approved some transfers, so you might have to scrub that number.
Yeah.
We did.
Okay?
Try to do a joke and you get hammered for it.
No, I'm just joking, Mark, we're just joking.
I thought it was good.
it was fun, but in all reality, yeah, I think it is something to look at. We're essentially one, disaster away from catastrophe. And I hate to look at it that way, but that's really what we have to look at. If there's something
Just
like-
take what happened in town hall.
Yeah.
We were lucky it was covered by insurance, but that was what, we were
Couple million.
millions. And that would have been devastating to the town if that wasn't covered.
If it doesn't get spent, it ends up going back.
Do you have an idea how much you're thinking about here?
Yes, we'll have to see where we are. I mean, I think if we
Oh,
can
from a
gradually.
realistic, forget the total.
Realistic?
From-
Looking
What do you
at a
think
budget
the
that's
number
your $130 million budget, right now you have a $300,000, $350,000 reserve. That's like well under 1%. You're looking at.
Oh, should it be 700, 20 million? I don't know, I'm asking the question.
I don't know, I think if we
Maybe at
could
least
start, yeah, I was originally thinking maybe in the 5 range.
$500,000?
Yeah, if that were possible. I mean, even that's not a lot on a $130 million budget. But if some major catastrophe were to happen.
Yeah,
there'd
we're
be
not
something.
obligated to spend the money. I
Right.
understand.
Right, we don't have to spend it. If it doesn't get spent, it doesn't go flush down the toilet, it ends up rolling back anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just, I just look at it as a precaution.
It's a cushion.
Something happens, we can resolve it within about 48 hours.
Can I ask a question on this?
Sure, absolutely.
Joel Wolk, to our finance director. Do you have actual expenses or encumbrances against this particular line item, or do you use it as a transfer?
It's a transfer, so every time you make a transfer, your budget numbers go down and the budget for the department that you transfer into goes up.
Does Munis have a report showing what all the transfers are?
Yes, if we do transfers, I don't think we've done any transfers for 24. It would give us a report, and what I'm used to doing is I would manage the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, so that when people wanted reserve funds, they would come to me as the town accountant and finance director, and I would say, yes, you can go forward with this, or no, and it would go before all of you, because sometimes people ask for reserve funds that I found in the past, going direct, and they didn't really need money. So with that, we can do a report, but no activity, no reporting.
No, I understand that, but you can provide it. All right, so let's say that there's $400,000 in the reserve fund, okay? And let's say we spend or transfer out $400,000. If that happens and somebody comes to you and says, I need extra money because of some horrible thing, what happens?
Go find.
If we have a horrible thing, then we go to the state and explain our situation for the horrible thing. And we could do emergency procurement as well as stating we can take money from the stabilization fund to cover the emergency, and or we can go to emergency borrowing to cover it. A lot of the things that would typically come up is if a pump station went down,
That's a good one.
things like that.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things that when you build your retained earnings, et cetera, we can do this. But we do have mechanisms to get emergency funding.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to actually clarify some of that. Some of the transfers we've done are not from the reserve.
I understand.
They're from department to department, and that's what we've been doing in the past. We had a transfer from the fuel reserve, I think it was a year and a half ago. That was when the octane thing all come up. That was a fuel transfer from the reserve, but traditionally we do department to department.
Yeah, that's
As far
what
as
I'm
the-
used to seeing.
As far as the stabilization, to draw from stabilization, that would take time.
Town meeting.
You have to go to town meeting, you need a two-thirds vote there. Finance committee could vote from the FinCom reserve, we just take the meeting.
Within 2 days.
Yeah, you need a 48-hour notice. I'm talking true emergency.
Unless it was, in a real emergency, you can do it in less.
And less than that,
Right.
yeah. But stabilization, you need to call a town meeting, you have to have a vote like that. Or to go to the state, that might take time, I don't know. I'm just saying, in a true tight emergency where something needs to happen within a few days. That's why I mentioned it. Yes, Mr. Laurie?
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned, the only kind of like policy you said was that we have a $130 million budget and we're less than 1%.
I just stated it as facts.
I'm using that as the context is that I don't like having just like a random, gee, I wonder how much we have left, let's throw that into reserve. Should we set a policy that says we shall have 1% of our budget or a number? If you're gonna use a benchmark, like you did just a little while ago, is that something that we should have, or should we just be willy-nilly and say, gee, I wonder how much we have? Well, wouldn't it be great if we could put that in reserve?
I guess that's a discussion that we'll have to have.
Right.
If it should be a percentage or some flat rate. I just know it's been in the threes for years.
Yeah.
And the budget's gone up, regardless of what the percentage was before, the percentage is lower now, because the budget as a whole has gone up, and the reserve is not. And to answer some of the questions, it's been said we don't use it, but the truth is you really don't want to use it.
Yeah.
If you use it, that's because it's a severe emergency.
Really bad.
It's an insurance policy that you hope you never need.
Yeah. You hope you don't spend it, but the day you need it, you're gonna want to be able to do it within a couple of days.
Can we see, is there like a benchmark or so what towns use?
We can
for
look it
something
up.
like that, if it's 1%, if it's 0.5%, or something like that?
Yeah, we can look into that.
Well, that's an interesting question.
good question.
In the past town that you worked on, what did they have for theirs? Do you remember?
Every community's different. The last town I worked in, it was 250,000.
Okay.
The town before that was roughly the same. I worked north of Boston for a period of time, and theirs was closer to $500,000, but they were more of a city than Stoughton is. But what needs to happen, this is something that the town manager enacted, and with Pam going for the community compact grant, and Pam had mentioned policy and procedures going forward. That's one of the things we're going to be addressing, is what's the best policy and procedure for stabilization funds, typically 5% of the budget, capital plans, things like that. So reserve fund policies, including the finance committee reserve, how do we best get this money to where it needs to go? So that's one of the things that hopefully in the next 9 months we'll have that report and that policy.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're using your experience to help us along the way. Ron, I think that it sounds like we should request the financial director and the town manager to make a recommendation based on their knowledge of what they think it should be.
I had a technical question before you do that.
Well, we could do that, they put the budget together with this.
Yeah, I understand.
I had hoped to bring it up gradually over a few years. I mean, that's kind of, but yeah, we can.
I just, technically
Wait till
though,
the policy.
technically, is this taking money from last year's appropriation and moving it forward, or did that roll over into free cash and then we add it back in against whatever funds we have? We can use free cash to fund it again, or like,
Once the year ends, any money that we do not spend, we do not
it rolls
develop,
over into
it becomes free cash.
turn back.
Correct.
Turn back, okay.
So, for instance, you turn back 350,000, if you didn't use that money last year,
Yeah.
it becomes part of free cash calculation.
And that could be one-time money going into this fund, as we could use free cash to fund this without it being a problem, because it's not really, is it treated like a one-time expense, or is it treated like an operating expense?
A reserve fund is an operating expense.
It's an operating
Yes.
expense.
In the budget.
Yeah, well, I know it's in the budget, but it's sort of like one-time money, because it goes in and then it's not really used unless it's spent for a one-time. That's why I asked technically about it, but that's good, all right, so it rolls over to free cash and we have to
You gotta refund.
reallocate, reappropriate the full amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the finance committee budget? And we have advertising and things in there too. We advertise a lot. So. Any other questions or comments, finance committee budget from the committee? No? Questions or comments from the public on the finance committee budget? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. I think the chair has a very valid point, and we can just point to Leominster. They went to the state, and then they went to the feds, and the answer is, it's not that big a disaster.
It's not bad enough.
But for Leominster, it's huge. They're actually going to have to buy and demolish some homes. And previous speaker mentioned FEMA maps and things like that. It doesn't seem like the water is following the map lines
They can't read?
across the country. You keep seeing people on TV going, I've lived here 40 years, we've never had a flood. So it's not unwise to plan for the unplanned.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public on the finance committee budget? Hearing none, we will move to the next item here. Annual town meeting articles, Article 28.
Page 25 in the
Chip,
warrant.
you gonna handle this?
Town pond management program, $64,000.
What page was that, John?
25 in the warrant. We're out of the budget onto the warrant. Warrant, in the warrant.
You can put the budget.
25 in the little book.
I think we ought to transfer money out of the town moderator's budget into the reserve.
I am willing to share.
I think the only money we spent out of the reserve last year was during the process of the budget we
We're passing out.
This is what's in the email, right? I hope so.
If it's not, please do.
We're not liable. FY 25.
No, that was already in the FY '23.
FY 23 is blanks.
Yeah, so we can get it in the book.
Does this match the email?
It's changed order.
It literally changes as of today.
What?
It changed it.
I know, it's not the easy one here, but.
The electronic.
Well, I was gonna look at the
I'm looking at the
email.
electronic one, it's no longer in.
It's a little change. He just said it's a little change.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll get a new one.
So-
We'll get it.
so to start off, this is the pond management article, as we mentioned. Thank you. It's not public management. We've been funding this article for several years now, since I think 2017, 15.
2017.
Craig's been getting involved with the lake management pond management program, along with JC. We call him JC, James Conlon, our environmental affairs officer, who's in the room tonight, our conservation chairman, who's very supportive of these articles and in the room tonight. We've got a very active conservation commission that supports these articles every year. Last year, Darren and I presented the article, and I think it was Adam and I think it was Adam. Actually, we were asking questions about how much it costs per year, what kind of treatments we did on what ponds. And it was a little embarrassing from my standpoint, because I didn't have good information for you. I think it might have been you, Eric. It was you, Eric. Okay, yeah, all right. I got easy.
Sorry, I was very incoherent when I was asking you about it, so you don't need to remember that.
Right. So, anyways, it was embarrassing not having those answers for you at that night. So now we've got a spreadsheet that tracks things since the beginning of time, what we spent, what we do on each pond, and we're going to keep it active as long as I'm here. Craig gets involved with that part. He can answer the big questions on it, the technical stuff. The expert is right in the back of the room over there, James Conlon, on the treatments, schedules, things like that. And then Jerry McDonald's also very educated. He's in the back corner, the chairman of the Conservation Commission. Craig, I don't know if you want to just give a high-level overview first.
Yeah, so I can just explain the spreadsheet that you have in front of you. It's just pretty much a history of what's happened since FY17, the ponds that we've treated, typically Ames Long Pond, Harris Pond, Denison Pond, and Alberts Pond. And it's typically a 5-year cycle of treatment, with the first year being what they call a reset, basically shocking the system and clearing out all the vegetation and getting the pond to a good baseline. And then there's a series of treatments that happen. And it can vary, it's a biological system. And so based on weather and rainfall and things like that, you'll get different growth rates, and treatments have to vary year to year. So it's sort of a fluid situation here. But typically we hit those ponds on a 5-year cycle, get back and reset them every 5 years. So we're looking to add Woods Pond into the mix. That's another one that's really getting a lot of vegetation growth and looks to need some attention. So that's been added in starting in FY24 and then moving into 25. And also in the packet, there's the latest quote that we've received from a consultant who would perform the services, working hand in hand with Jim Conlon. They'll do a pre-treatment inspection of every water body and then decide the best course of action for the year. And I'll leave it there, and if you have any more technical questions, Jim and Jerry are here to.
Do we have any questions or comments from the committee on Article 28, Town Pond Management Program?
What's the,
Mark Struck?
Thank you. I know on this program that you guys have set in place, I've got a lot of good responses from people, but I haven't asked. Besides just chemicals, are you looking at ways to treat or take care of these things without using chemicals?
Mechanical methods and things of that nature?
Yeah.
Jim, do you want to?
Yes, I can answer that question. When we initiated this program in 2016, the first attempt to control the invasive exotic weeds, the target weed was Cabamba carolina that infested Ames Pond, our first and largest impaired water body in the town of Stoughton. What we did at that time is we employed a hydro rig and also a harvester, 2 large machines on the surface of the pond to recover the weeds. There's pluses and minuses in using that type of a approach. We had installed a turbidity curtain in order to prevent revegetation from fragmentation for the most part. It was successful. After that, we did employ a program with respect to resetting the pond with Floridone two formulations, a pelletized and a liquid formulation, in accordance with the product label of the herbicide. It's good herbicide use because of its low toxicity to invertebrates and animals, and humans for the most part. It's been used in drinking water supplies in other states, but not Massachusetts. We were highly successful our first year of treating Ames Pond, the only pond that we treated in the program in 2017. Then successively after that, we added ponds. And the first treatment would be a reset with Fluoridone, and then they're basically on a 5-year cycle. It doesn't have to be a 5-year cycle if the treatment fails. For instance, the first time we did a reset on Albert's Pond, we weren't satisfied with the results, so the contractor came back the next year and reset it again at no charge to the town. But Albert's Pond is one of the worst cases in the town, and even last year where it was supposedly reset, the South Basin looked like it wasn't even reset at all, and it's going to need to be done again. And so we're going to be employing some different herbicides that are approved for this work. Procellacor is an herbicide used in Glen Echo by the town of Canton, who treated the entire Lake Glen Echo, as a courtesy for the most part. We'll be using that, and it's a different herbicide which will stagger the resistance of the vegetation in our water bodies. So we're on top of it, but basically, like Craig says, it involves an initial inspection early in the growing season, and then preferably as early as possible, certain herbicides are added, like the systemic Sonar and Procellacor to tackle the worst aggressive species such as Kabamba and milfoil, which is another one. It's a big problem in our ponds. Once we get control of that and our water bodies are improving, we can use spot segregated treatment applications. With time, it'll be less expensive to treat our ponds, but we're not there yet at all. And we want to add another impaired water body this year, Ames Pond, Woods Pond, which will be inspected this spring by our contractor. It seems to be on track, and they're doing a good job, and we're getting positive feedback from folks in the community, and it's always been supported. And there hasn't been any problem, basically, for the most part. Nothing that we can't deal with in the office.
So basically it's just chemical that you're...
Yeah, we're using herbicides now. There are other physical means, such as the hydro-raking, and the hydro-raking can be used to recover organic sediment also, which is a problem in some of our ponds, especially Harris ponds. You'll get the mats of organic sediment floating that are brought to the surface by nitrogen in the water column, and then you'll have animals and you'll have growth on these mats of vegetation. And what we have to keep in mind is the reason we need to treat these ponds, and they're treated in ecological restoration programs approved by the Conservation Commission. If we don't treat these ponds, they're going to succeed into swamps and eutrophic conditions and so forth. So yeah, we're looking at other things. We're doing herbicides right now, but we're not ready for a hydro-raking or a physical procedure to remove organic matter yet. But that is definitely something that we are open to.
Would dredging at all be on Harris?
Dredging would be very expensive in a way. There is machinery where you can pull up the organic sediment and not necessarily qualify as a dredging project, which is very expensive to perform, and there's a lot of permitting involved with certain agencies such as the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's almost cost prohibitive. Yeah, so we're looking at other more innovative ways to remove the organic sediment, and the use of a hydro-rake is one method, but that is not planned for this year. But we are.
I believe that we have the chairman of the Conservation Commission.
I just want
would like to comment on
Jerry
it.
McDonald, Chair of the Conservation Commission, excuse me, Precinct 4, Town Meeting Rep. I just want to expand on what Jim said on two things. Hydro raking, very expensive. I mean, we did, I think, 4 or 6 acres of Ames Pond, and it probably cost us $20,000.
I would say we did more than that.
Maybe 10 or 20, maybe, but it's 92 acres, and it was very expensive to do just a small portion of it for hydro raking. And sometimes the hydro raking
rips the stuff up, floats in the water and regrows, so it's not as, it can be not a long-term solution. Dredging, as Jim mentioned, you have to go to the Army Corps of Engineers to get a permit to do it, and it would be extremely expensive. So that's it. The other note, just Jim mentioned Glen Echo. Just to be clear, Stoughton doesn't own Glen Echo. Glen Echo is in the town of Canton for the most part, and they actually own the part of the lake that's in Stoughton. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article Joel Wolf?
Finance Committee. Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The Article 28 shows an estimated cost of $64,000. What was just handed out shows an estimated cost of $67,210. What are we carrying? What's the number?
Who would like to address this?
You changed the contingency from 5% to 10%.
And you're now, according to this handout, you're up to $67,210. Is that the number you want in this particular article?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, then it's fine. We can take care of that.
We need to make.
Thank you.
67,210.
67,210.
Okay.
Okay with that.
Elliot Hanson, do you have a question on this, Article 28?
Joel might know. Did we at one time own the hydro ring to buy one or something?
No.
No.
You want the actual
That's the time I've been here.
You should.
Okay, any other questions from the committee on Article 28? Eric, you have a question?
Yeah, it's really just a bookkeeping question. I'm looking at the letter from Water and Wetland towards the end, talking about how the treatment year is basically split between fiscal years and recommending a portion of the budget be allotted to the current fiscal year and then the remainder to the fiscal 25. Does it actually work that way?
What was the question?
Does it work that way? Like, if we're putting this on the fiscal 25,
We're putting it on fiscal
Lauren,
25.
there's no way to say we're spending it in fiscal 24, right? So
We had money in fiscal 24.
There's money from 24.
is there
so
some remaining that would
that's
like
what I'm guessing
essentially
there-
even that out?
That's what I'm thinking
Okay,
there.
that was all.
That's the good thing about articles for something like this, sometimes, is they go on.
Mhm.
What's in your budget stops at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, we're all, on a side note, we were contemplating, once JC, Craig and myself, is maybe instead of coming every year with an article for this, we do maybe a 3-year period at once.
Oh, that'd be nice.
It's not really a budget thing because for the reason I just explained to you, but if we did a 3-year pond management program, you wouldn't have to see an article every single year on it.
So, let's get back to the amount.
Clarified the number.
What is the amount that we,
64,000.
so it's not 67?
I think we should go to 67,000. We should.
Let's get some
The article says
clarification.
64,000, that's the quote we got, so we should be doing 64,000.
Okay, we're good with 64,000?
67,000.
Why did you send out this?
I honestly don't know why it says 67,000 there.
The contingency went from 5% to 10%. That's where the increase came.
That's an us thing. The quote we have is 64,000.
67 sounds good. We're gonna go with the
So
quote.
what do we want the article to be, 64,000?
Exactly estimated 64,000.
Okay, here we go,
Takes
perfect.
care of that.
Thank you for clarification. Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article 28, Town Pond Management Program?
I just have a comment. I just
Sure.
would not want.
Dave Lurie.
Yes, thank you, David Lurie. I just
I'm not
would
Dave
not
Lurie,
want to
that's you.
swim in anything called fanwort or milfoil. I just wanted to say.
We'll keep
Thank
that
you,
in
the
mind.
public will be thrilled. Mark Struck, do you have a follow-up question or comment on Article 28?
Yeah, I would like to actually see it up to the 67 instead of 64. I'd like to play it safe, just in case.
Why don't we round up to 70?
Let me see.
Take the 67.
Where does it say
67,
67?
okay.
So, but what is,
It's on
Well,
this.
listen, honestly, I'll refer to the chairman of the conservation, it's a conservation article. I would
Jim
like
says go with
Mine is
what's on the sheet, 67. 210.
I know.
That's what Jim
Change the
says.
contingency from
Okay.
5% to
I mean, hey, listen, we're talking about $3,000.
It was.
That's my budget, don't mess with
we
it.
go to 67?
That's the old budget. Sorry, Bob.
So,
Chairman, I gave you the 64, so I'll go with the quote.
okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mark, please identify yourself for the record. Mark Zemanian.
Mark Zemanian, Precinct 1, 5 Low Avenue. I would be in favor of the 67,210, but I'm told that the warrant was printed with the number of 64,000. Can you in fact increase the scope?
It's not
You mean increase the number?
Which is increasing the scope.
Does Finance Committee have the
It's
authority?
increasing the dollar amount.
The scope isn't changing, it's the same service.
No, well.
Can you change the number then?
We've got the moderator here, let's ask him his opinion.
This moderator.
I'd say no.
Thank you.
Really?
I'm not against increasing it. I like the idea of giving them a little bit of a buffer, but I'm wondering if we're going to run into trouble at town meeting.
It's a council question, I agree, but in my opinion, we've done this in the past, where if the article language itself doesn't have the number in it, which it doesn't.
I was told it did.
No, it does.
No,
It has the number in it.
It said estimated cost.
The mo-
You can ask Brian.
Let me clarify that, that's the motion.
The motion,
The motion is
the
something that
motion,
can change.
So the article lacks the number.
Right.
Then I would agree with Mark on that.
No.
The motion that we vote on.
Oh, the motion's better too.
The motion has 64.
It also says it in the.
the article just talks about the management of it.
This warrant has a number of 64.
The article does not have the number in it.
This one does.
No, the motion does.
No, the article, it's right there, John.
It says estimated costs in there.
Estimated cost
That's not
$64,000.
part of the article, that's information after the article.
No, that's in the article, it says it right
No,
there.
no. We're talking standards here.
Am I wrong? It's the article, it says the cost.
All right, let me clarify this. If I can
No,
clarify
the
this,
mo-
Mr. Chairman.
Vote the motion, I agree.
Yes, Mr. Tisdale.
No good deed goes unpunished, let's start off with that.
Thank you.
So, this year, we put the motions in really solid format, which our committee has not seen in years. The motions provide information about the funding sources. The selectmen, when they vote the warrant, they do not vote unless the number is written in the article, they vote the article. I'm not an attorney, we can get an opinion on this, but the number estimated costs, a lot of times, you see it to be determined, or
Right,
is
blank.
Yeah.
And I'd agree with you if it was blank, but it's not blank. That was my
We
concern.
increased it a couple of years ago for something else. I forget what it was. It was a
Just
time
want to make
coming.
sure we're not going to run into this on the floor, that's all.
That's fine.
So we'll reach out to town council, because it sounds like everybody would like to have that, sure.
The
That was my
motion,
opinion.
the motions were put in here at our request to try and have something more firm, like last year we had none or whatever. And they were kind enough to go through and do it based on what we had at the time.
Agreed.
But it's the finance committee who chooses how the thing is gonna be funded, and there was no money stipulated
Okay.
in the article. That's how we're looking at it. So,
Fair enough.
The key point, John.
Thank you, John.
It doesn't say actual cost, it says
Estimated,
estimated.
it does. That is correct.
yeah.
We agree.
Cynthia Walsh, do you have a comment on this?
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. The warrant I have says proposed motion.
Correct.
Correct.
That's not the motion. The motion's what comes out of the mouth of either the FinCom chair or the vice chair. So, although I'm reluctant to mention I don't have a law degree, but I do have over 40 years' experience with town meeting and 8 years' experience on the select board.
Well, thank you.
Jerry,
would you like to address this?
Conservation Chair, I appreciate if the Finance Committee would make the recommendation of the 67,000 figure, but if it's 64, we'll be very happy to.
I've made note of it, and since it's coming from free cash, we'll just have to see what's available when we're going through the.
Right, but I
when we make our
understand,
votes.
okay, besides the mechanics of it,
Yep.
we'll be
Any other
happy.
questions or comments from the public?
Duly noted. Duly noted in the master file.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article 28 Town Pond Management Program? Any other questions or comments from the public? Article 28 Town Pond Management Program. Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
Still Cynthia Walsh, still 1096 Park Street, and as far as I know, still Precinct 3. The previous speaker mentioned dredging. I don't know whether folks are aware that there are no natural ponds in Stoughton. They're all old mill ponds. I'd be very reluctant to dig into the
dredge.
ground and discover Stoughton's industrial past.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that comment.
That's why permitting is so expensive.
Okay, and, yeah, any other comments from the public on Town Plan Management Program, Article 28?
Quick question over here, Vaughn.
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Through you, Vaughn. Are all the ponds in Stoughton on your list somewhere? Are they all on the listing?
Keep in mind, these are town-owned ponds. Does not include any pond that's on private
Okay, all
property.
town-owned ponds?
Town-owned ponds.
Are all on the listing?
There's other ponds that are on private
Okay.
property.
Understood. Now, is that available online that we can look at those lists too? Be able to put that up?
Town ponds?
Well, just your listing of your pond
All
management.
ponds are on the GIS.
But is your pond management program? If I wanted to go out to your website and say, hey, what's on the Town of Stoughton's pond management program?
Yeah, I don't believe we have anything up on.
Do you show anything about what you've done on this?
Are you talking about the
through all
chart we
the
have?
forms?
Well, just your program. Do you have a list of
Like
ponds?
an outline of
Yeah, I mean,
about it. We can put this outline on.
Which pond is
I think it's
what's
good
been
for the
done?
residents to know what's going on, what we're spending our money on.
I can't disagree with you.
Pretty good.
Any
That's
other,
all, just to, you know.
any other questions from the public on Article 28 Town Plan Management Program?
Yes, they do.
I only have one question, and somebody had mentioned that Canyon owns Glen Echo. As far as Ames Pond, does Easton own any of that pond?
Yes.
They do.
They own about 30% at the end at the eastern end, because the town line goes right through there.
Okay, and I'm asking this because I'm wondering, does Easton contribute any money? Do they do any treatment?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just was really curious.
No, but
And a resident asked me about
they
this.
they were invited to the meetings when the program was set up, et cetera, and they're in a butter.
Yeah.
But we still treat their portion of the pond.
Not directly, but
All right, thank you. All right, no more questions from the public on Article 28? Okay, perfect. Move to Article 29.
Same page.
Intersection improvements design, Plain and West Street intersection.
thank you, Jim.
Estimated cost $55,000.
Article number 29. Same page. Bottom hand.
Okay, would you like to handle this, Mr. Tisdale?
Thank you.
Okay.
This is different also. This is new as well.
Is this the same that's in the email?
I'm James Conlon.
Okay. We already have this one.
I'm in the office.
I also have a question, that's my role. I asked you about as long as nothing's changed. Oh, I do, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so what we just passed out was Article 29, intersection improvement design for Plain and West Street intersection. So as you can see from the PowerPoint, that this is one of those intersections in town that has somewhat of an awkward configuration. We have a few others in town that we refer to as the Y intersections, where you can split at the top of the intersection and go left or right. It's typically done with a painted island in the middle, which gets covered with snow. It's tough to see at night, and it's atypical of what you'd see in the rest of the world. Driving around, we somehow ended up with a bunch of these here in Stoughton. This one here at Plain and West Street, we just did a road safety audit of Plain Street with OCPC, and this is one of the intersections that we looked at. This was done in the fall. It just so happened that the day that we were out there, I think hours before we were there was a bad accident. And a car had actually smashed into one of the stone walls at the intersection and moved some of the really large stones there. So just to kind of illustrate the dangerousness of the current configuration. What we're looking to do is sort of square it off a little bit better, get rid of that right-hand off-ramp in that area, make all drivers come up to the T intersection, and so they have a better line of sight, and just make for a safer intersection. It'll also shorten the crosswalk length. I think right now it's about 120 feet to get from one side to the other. It's a long way for a pedestrian to have to traverse and be in the middle of the road. So we're looking to squeeze that out. So the proposal that we have is we're asking for $55,000. The proposal comes to about 49. So we're leaving a little extra, but that's survey, design, and getting us plans that would be ready to go out to bid to construct the improvements.
All right, thank you very much for that. Questions? Joel, you have a question?
If I understand this correctly, the final deliverable would be biddable plans and specs?
Yes.
Okay, so that means we should look forward to, at some point in time, an article to actually do the work, bid the work and do it.
Correct.
That's gonna be the next
That's the
step.
intention, yeah. There'll
That's
be
the
big,
intent.
big documents that we can put out on the street.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, do you, I just had a question. Right now, as you travel West Street heading, I think, south, I mean, you know, up on the diagram,
That would be north.
it's north, heading
Yes, it is.
up is north.
Technically, it'd be a little northwest, but you're heading north.
Okay, so the other side is, okay, so that picture is the other way, okay. Coming down then, is, that's the inner part of the intersection that I always experience very difficult time trying to get onto Plain Street.
Yes.
So is that gonna help us with the sight line, you know, or the visibility on cars coming toward Bay Road?
Absolutely, that'll be looked at. So that happens to be a town-owned piece there, so if we need to clear vegetation.
That's very scary trying to get on the plane.
That was brought up in the road safety audit, and that'll definitely be one of the items that we address.
Try doing it on a bicycle.
Oh,
So you would be looking to cut back the vegetation there, because that's what.
approval, yeah.
Yes.
Mark, you have a question?
Yes.
I just have a comment.
So far, I'm liking the design of it. Was there any thought of putting a four-way stop in just to solve it?
Well, that'll be part of the design. So this is a concept plan you're looking at. This is just a
Four-way stop, that's coming off
No,
of
that was
west,
the point I wanted to bring
taking
up.
a left to go to the spot. That sucks.
It has to be-
There's a four-way stop there, like.
Yeah, so you don't just plot four-way stop signs in everywhere, which sometimes it can be a good thing, but it's gotta actually meet specific criteria of warrants. That's gonna pass with volume, peak flow, things of that nature. So we're gonna evaluate.
But that would be looked at.
That will be.
Yeah.
Any
You're not the
other,
first one to say that, so we're definitely gonna.
That was gonna be my question.
any other questions or comments from the committee? Article 29, intersection improvements, design, Plain and West Street intersections. Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Article 29, intersection improvements, design, Plain and West Street intersections. Wow, hearing none. Turn to the next
Just
item.
turn the page.
Article 30, Canton and School Street intersection improvements design, $225,000. Don't hand out, okay.
No, but I mean, they've already. Yeah. You keep on. I took one.
Oh, okay.
That's.
And pass from the system to the approval.
Mr. Tisdale, would you like to
Sure.
handle this?
So the information, the orange color presentation, if we may need to modify it, correct, depending on our photocopies, is exactly what you have that Ron's delivered to you. It's the same backup information. As you know, the Canton, just give you a little history about the Canton and School Street intersection. And I think Christine is, will understand what I'm saying. As you know, for a while, the train was going to cut through the center of town. And mitigation for that train cutting through the town was going to be sought by the town of Stoughton with the MBTA to include this intersection. Now, they took a different route. They went through the middle borough.
You're talking South Coast Rail.
South Coast Rail.
No.
South Coast Rail, exactly. So this intersection has always been the top intersection to address in town. But for years, it was kind of put on pause until we kind of knew what was going on with that South Coast Rail project. Now that we knew what was going on with it, it's actually, I drive by the Middleborough parking lot every day. It's open, it's constructed, so we obviously know what's going on. So now we tackled this article this year because if you remember, you may or may not remember, but some opera funds came in, and 416,000 of those opera funds were allotted to the design of this intersection. So this design is underway now. We've been to Mass DOT meetings, many meetings, unfortunately. They've revised their whole process, the whole permitting process. They have new steps in the process called the ICE review. I won't get bogged down with the details, but essentially they go through the review, and literally, I think we were on the meeting, there was 50 Mass DOT people on the meeting. How about that? We were out like 40, 50. It was pretty intense. So we're there, and everybody has a comment, and what it came down to, but the consensus of everybody was, we're going to need to look at the intersection of Cushman Street and coordinate that with Canton and School Street because of the train. So cars don't get stuck on the train tracks in between. So that increased the scope of the project, which is what this is. The $225,000 is for the amendment to the original contract. And you have that in your backup information. The quote is for like 180 and change, 180,000. 187. But we've been through this, and we've been pretty successful at this point with these traffic projects. There's always something that happens. There's always Mass DOT will say, hey, you know what, you didn't account for this, or you didn't do this, whatever it may be. And then we have to sign a change order with our consultant to do that service. If we pin it right down to the 180,000 or whatever that number was, it really pigeonholes us to get, if we have another 20,000 we need to finish the project. So we rounded it up. I hope we don't use it all. If we don't, it goes back. But this is great. We worked hard in a short amount of time. Mass DOT loves working with the town of Stoughton. They really appreciate all of you, all your support through the previous years with the funding, all the town meeting reps, because they know we get the projects done. There's so many communities that Mass DOT works with that they invest their time in getting these projects completed or trying to get them completed, and they go nowhere because either the town can't fund the extra funding, or the town can't get the right-of-way established, which means easements and things of that nature. It just dies. They know we get it done. We've got the Complete Streets project, this Safe Routes to School project complete. That was a year of a project to get all the easements squared away. That's under construction now. Tosca Drive will be starting this year, towards the end of this year. That's all done, which matches in with the Safe Routes to School project. We did the intersection at Pearl in Central Street. A few years before that, we did a sidewalk up to Route 138. Next year, we're going to have the Route 138 project, which is a DOT project supported by the town. So now you're getting into huge corridors. The planning is coming together, so everything connects. Mass DOT loves it. They're like, these people are getting these projects done. So we're going to keep on riding the wave, right? As long as we can. We spend $225,000 out of borrowing for town meeting. We're getting about $5 million in construction for free from the state. So we invest a little bit to get all that. That's how all these projects work. So you've heard it. We have another one going there in the Park and Turnpike Street intersection, right? Your town meeting approved that 2 or 3 years ago. That's in design and permitting now. That's also going to be hopefully programmed on a future TIP. The TIP is a Transportation Improvement Program. That's the program that funds it through the state. If we can get that on there, that's another $5 million. The Route 138 project is $20 million. This is why I need help from somebody like this gentleman over here, which he works on all these programs and these projects to keep them moving forward. nutshell, that's that article. I don't know if you have any technical
I
stuff
think we
there.
covered everything, yeah, just the construction year slated for this is 2028, and the estimate right now is 4.25 million. It's bound to escalate between now and 2028, so.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Anzavino, you have a question on this?
Sure, John Anzavino, Finance Committee. Mark, on this, is this gonna be signalized now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna address the merge of summer and school too.
Yep.
I noticed the stoppers, and that'll take care of that. Well, when you're coming in, you know the deal, they don't stop either side. All right, thank you very
The
much.
shading on that pavement there kind of stops short of Cushing Street, but there's another signal back at Cushing Street.
Up here.
Yeah. Yeah, so those will be coordinated.
All right, thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Article 30, Joel Wolf, you have a question on this?
Joel Wolf, Finance Committee. What are the deliverables on this contract?
So that's Mass DOT has a really specific
I'm sure they
package
do,
that they're
but
looking
what are
for.
they?
So it's design plan specifications, construction cost estimates.
Is it 100% design?
Yes.
Yeah, and right away.
Right of way plans.
Right away plans.
Okay, it doesn't look like it from what it shows here, but okay.
Well, you have 416,000 plus 225.
No, I understand that, but taking a look at the cost breakdown, it shows nothing in the geotechnical design, project development. There's no bridge, right?
No.
Okay. And then, oh, there you have something. PSNE submission, that's what I was looking for. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're gonna put a bridge over the railroad track.
Elliot, you have a question on this? Elliot
As a matter
Hanson?
of fact, I do, thank you, Vaughn. Elliot Hanson, Pleasant Street, Stoughton, and Finance Committee.
Whatever.
A few years ago, or several years ago, we had the lights installed in the Stoughton Center. And for the longest times, they weren't even communicating with each other. So we had the lights that did something, but it wasn't necessarily positive. This is gonna be signalized. Is that gonna be able to be coordinated with the lights downtown, or is it a little too far away, or something in between?
We've asked our consultants that question. It's too far away. There's an equation and calculation you do to figure that out, based on queuing of cars and how they impact the square and things of that nature. It's just too far away to coordinate those two.
Okay, good. Hopefully it'll work out.
All right, any other questions?
Tighten with the crossing? Is that correct? Just, I mean, it would seem obvious, but.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Mark Struck, you have a question on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to double check, which I'm sure that the MBTA has been notified, or are they on board with this? And are they gonna change up their signaling also?
They'll be involved with the design process. We've already had a field meeting out at the intersection with them, so at their railroad crossing, so. Yeah, they're involved in the design process.
Right. I know we just have the two arms that go down. Is there gonna be like, yes, be an arm or no? Or?
Yeah, so they'll be doing like the sidewalk and everything and changing the configuration in that area so that the arms that come down, stop traffic, will be upgraded.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Article 30, Canton School Street intersection improvements design. Any other questions
I'll
from?
make that simple. You said it was gonna be tied in with the signal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that the signal they have trouble a lot when it gets stuck and you have to send someone down there?
The train track one?
That's the one on,
On Central Street.
Right over here.
I want to Central Street is the one where I was stuck all the time.
No, I mean, that's gonna be part of the whole deal.
Yes.
All three parts.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Article 30, Canton School Street intersection improvements design. Hey, any questions or comments from the public? Cynthia Walsh.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. There has been a pedestrian fatality at this location. That's what started the ball rolling years ago. When you did your traffic studies, Did you do them between, say, 7 and 8 a.m. and 1 and 2 p.m. for the school traffic that goes into the high school and the middle school?
I don't recall the exact times right now.
They're always done at the peaks, so that those specific times that you outlined, I think it's like 7 and 9 in the morning,
It's just that
and 4 to 6 in the evening, yeah.
because Stoughton
We always hit
has
those
limited busing, many parents, well, there's a fee for busing. So many parents drive to and from, and plus when school lets out or school starts. It doesn't seem the kids use the sidewalks that are there.
Walk down the train tracks.
But we're talking hundreds of kids. We're not, I mean, there are two bigger schools. But you say that that's been studied, I'm satisfied.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the public on Article 30?
Yes,
Yes, Mr. Gito, please.
just a comment, Lou Gito, 1261 West Street. There was a litany of projects that have been begun over the last 7 or 8 years. I have been in town for many decades. And there has never been as much of this kind of work done as there has been in the last 8 years. And I just say to you that that is mostly the responsibility and the work that the town engineer, assistant town manager has done, he and his staff. Before the recent times, people didn't even bother applying for these things. So just keep that in mind, and I thank him and I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much for that. Mark Semanian, do you have a question or comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, for the record, Mark Semanian, 5 Low Avenue, Precinct 1. Through you to the town engineer, is that what we call you right now? Sure. These are both much needed projects. They're both weird and confusing intersections, and there's a lot of smaller accidents. What is the process of getting another intersection on your plate and in front of you? And I'm speaking specifically about the intersection of Pleasant and Lincoln. You have made some mitigation there over the years, but I'm really tired of seeing cars on their side and crying women on corners. How do we, from the public's perspective, get that to be a priority for you as well?
So, about 8 years back, 7, 8 years back, we created a priority plan. And this past year, Craig and I have been going through it, and this is like, a lot of this is done now. So, we applied for a complete street grant. Actually Craig did, and he got it. I think Bill, you heard Bill mention that earlier in the presentation, $38,000. So that's our portion of it. There's gonna be a public process involved with that. A complete street prioritization plan is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's adding sidewalks, it's improving intersections, it's improving roadways, traffic stuff. And you prioritize, so we'll have a prioritization plan prepared as a deliverable for that. That'll be our new plan moving forward.
Okay.
And that'll be this coming year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Another part of the equation of getting things onto the tip are having studies done through OCPC, like the road safety audit that we just did for Pleasant Street. So that intersection was looked at. I don't know if maybe you saw 10 people out there with safety vests on.
I was with
a couple
them.
of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I don't have another decade of my life to see that become a safe intersection, so.
You put those things together, and then we've got some firepower to get up on the tip and get these projects done.
Thank you.
There's also a project, I think, on Pleasant and Low that had a roadway.
Still waiting.
Any other questions or comments on Article 30 from the public on Canton School Street intersection improvements design? No other questions or comments from the public on Article 30? Okay, we will go to Article 31.
Turn the page.
Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements.
So I'm gonna be predictable and have some more handouts for you.
These the same that were in the email?
Yes.
Well, Cynthia doesn't get emails, so.
Some people like it.
Yeah. It's the same, but
I got too much paper on my trash bills.
But if we run out,
Johnny, we don't have recycling in here, do we? I don't think so.
they don't do recycling.
Our numbers retain everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because we still have to keep spending that money. Yeah.
No, I understand.
I could use one. Thank you. I got one. Just do one.
whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This article is for Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements. Drainage is also known as stormwater. It's a side joke with John. So this article is for $67,000 for design. Now, design of a parking lot. We have a parking lot, so why are we designing one? Because the parking lot isn't truly striped. There's no definition of parking spaces in that parking lot. You can't get the most efficient number of people parking in the parking lot if it's a not defined area. Also, the parking lot is gravel. Cars drip oils and greases in the ground. Oils and greases go right in the ground if there's no pavement there. If this was a new project, you would have to pave it. You'd have to provide stormwater management before it discharges into the pond. But right now, everything goes into the ground, or because it's compacted gravel, it runs right, it discharges into the ground or discharges right into the pond with no treatment. The pond is obviously a protected area. We're trying to comply with the new standards that are in place with DEP. Also, as part of our MS4 permit, we're required to upgrade municipal sites. And that's one of the sites we can pick, because it's an easy one. Everything flows to a pond that's right there. We can pave the parking lot. We can provide a nice low-impact stormwater design feature around the pond. Something that's not too deep, looks good. We can do different plants in there. We'll actually make the area around the pond look really nice, but it'll also treat stormwater runoff. Now, yes, there will be a construction article after this, after we provide the design. But like we did with the Gibbons School a few years back, if we do the design, we can apply for 319 grants and other types of grants that will pay for most of the construction out there. So I think, to me, the benefit of this is right now is getting the design done, applying for the grants to get the construction complete. I would not want to come to town meeting without investing every avenue of grants before I ask you to pay $500,000 to pave a parking lot to provide stormwater management. Because I understand it may not be the highest of priority for the town right now. But we do believe we have a very good shot at getting a grant like we already got with the Gibbons School. I'm sure Craig can add to that.
Sure. I just want to mention the layout that you have in front of you. You say, well, why are we paying for design? Looks like we have one. What you have is a 25% design plan that was prepared by Horsley and Witten. And we got that through services through the Neponset, through the Watershed Association. And they helped us out in doing this plan. So we have a rough design. It's at the 25% level. And, the article would, do 100% design plans for this project. Like Mark said, we'd be looking to add low impact development techniques and for the BMPs for treatment. Horsley and Witten picked a few nice components that would be added there, and I think we can finalize that and fit together and really help formalize the parking situation out at the golf course right now. Like Mark said, like a portion of it's paved, some of it's gravel. It's just really a haphazard parking area. So just formalize it, fix it up, and make it.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Articles? Mark struck?
Yeah, with the Gibbons, I can't remember, the Gibbons one, the grant, the school's been involved with that. Is that on my right? The school, the kids were involved with that,
Oh, yeah.
or whatever.
Yes.
On this design, are you gonna do the same thing, but invite, like high school or like junior high to maybe get a different grant or a better, more grant money, having the kids involved with this?
You could totally roll this into our program. The program I was mentioning that we paid them on to.
Right.
To teach, they could bring students here. It may be a little more difficult because it's not right outside of the school, but yeah, it could be definitely a teaching moment. I personally, I wouldn't even mind teaching the kids about this.
That's right.
Like, we love this stuff.
There's a lot involved with that they may not be thinking of sitting in classes, but this could actually be a job thing to do futuristic.
So it's something that we can talk about with career fair coming up in high school. So, how fun it is to be an engineer.
Dave?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
The 25%, what is that? This is 75% of the 25% we already have, or what is 25%?
It's a level of design, so it's a 25% design drawing.
That's what 67,000 buys us is?
No, what you have in front of you
Is
has
the-
already been done to a 25% design level.
Oh, we already have 25%.
Yes, so this will
This
take
gets
them-
us to 100%. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Elliot, you have a question on this?
Is there any money available from the CPC funds either for implementing this or at least for the study?
We have the chairman of the CPC here. Perhaps he could answer this?
Perhaps you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Semanian, Chairman of the CPC. In answer to your question, we have not received an application for this. We only review asks from department heads and nonprofits. In this case, the CPA, which is the law that governs how we spend our money, I can refer to a recent case where there was an ask at a playground for a large area of pavement, and it did not conform to the Community Preservation Act, so I couldn't speak for this. It's possible a portion of it could be paid through the CPC. It would require the town to collaborate with our CPC, our Community Preservation Committee, and we could look at it, we could analyze it, and give them an answer. We have a great relationship with the Coalition, which is the nonprofit that assists towns and cities on how best to spend that money and what's allowable. So, could be looked at if we're contacted.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments from the committee? Article 31, Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements. Really, no more questions. I have a comment on this, or it might be a question. It says Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements, but this is the design, right?
Right.
Okay, the previous two articles that we discussed here were both the design, but in the heading, they both labeled design. Why is this one not labeled Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements design? To someone who just skims through the warrant, they might be led to believe that this is to do the project, not to design it.
Be a great price for that, too.
I know, that's why I was. I'm saying, if you look at the warrant, Article 29, intersection improvement design. Article 30, Canton and School Street intersection improvements design.
I'll have to talk to the person who works on the work. She might have.
Well, the select board approves it like this, right?
No, the word, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I know.
So the joke is that I probably left.
You did, yeah.
So, but in the article wording, it has design in there.
You taking this stuff home?
Okay. It mentions design in it, in the article?
Yeah.
I know, take your word for it, but I don't see the word design in there anyway. I can read it out loud if you'd like.
I mean, it's gotta have the word, it doesn't have the word.
Okay.
What page you on?
On page 27. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds, the treasurer, if any, and or borrow sufficient sums of money for professional consulting services to provide survey, civil engineering, and other related consulting services with respect to drainage, parking, traffic, and landscape improvements Cedar Hill Golf Course to take any action relative thereto.
Okay. So engineering and survey.
Yeah, but I'm saying the word design is not mentioned anywhere in that.
That's what engineers do.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. What I'm saying is that the previous two articles specifically use the word design. That's what I'm trying to say. My other question is this to be paid for through retained earnings? It says that. I want to be clear that that's still the case. Okay. Great. Any other questions from the committee? Article 31. Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Cynthia Walsh, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, member of the Cedar Hill Committee for the last 46 years. Because it's 1137 Park Street, so I have a kind of an interest in what happens across the street from my farm. And my point is that over 30 years ago, when we expanded the parking lot, the reason why it's not paved is the town's Conservation Commission said we could not use an impervious substance. Maybe in 30 years the rules have changed
Yeah.
because it's so close.
I did.
That's good news, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a question, a comment, a question, Mark?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. Mark Smanian, Precinct 1. So we have 25% here, right?
Yeah.
In the design. Where did we get the money to pay for that, just for clarifications? Okay, so it was a grant? Excellent. And am I to presume that, although this is from the retained earnings at Cedar Hill, is it fair to say that the cost of this will exceed the retained earnings in the future?
The construction costs?
Yes. Meaning it'll likely be an article to the town, not a part of the Cedar Hill.
Like I said, we're gonna hope a grant pays for most of it, but it would probably be at least an article will pay for some of it. Sometimes what we have to do is actually go to town meeting for the full amount of the
Front
article.
it, right.
And then get reimbursed.
Yeah.
We've been
So,
burned
but
by that.
it's not likely to come out of retained earnings, correct?
We've been burned by that.
Construction.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's not likely, I think was the final question, it's not likely?
Yeah, Craig answered it.
Okay, thank you, I didn't hear that.
I think Cynthia did it.
Cynthia, do you have another comment on that?
Yes. I have a comeback.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Our understanding of the committee is it would be a borrowing, but we would pay it off. I don't know if our finance director can give us an idea of what the retained earnings are right now.
The figure down payment with retained earnings for the Cedar Hill is roughly $696,000. There are a number of articles out there for Cedar Hill Golf. And at the point now where I'm reconciling all the articles to what's available for retained earnings. $67,000 is absolutely covered with that retained earnings. As far as the construction, that's a totally different deal. Thank you so much. Cedar Hill is $696,000 retained earnings. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, construction itself, that's not gonna happen for a while. So each year your retained earnings stops and you have to recalculate for the next year. So chances are for $500,000 out of retained earnings to cover a parking lot, probably not.
What about covering the 10-year borrowing or a 20-year borrowing?
Well, that's something we have to look at, and because we don't have any figures yet, we have to look at all the borrowing that we have scheduled out. How is that going to impact the Cedar Hill and some other things going forward? So we have to look at that more clearly.
Oh, well, to give information to the committee, during the pandemic, everyone seemed to have discovered Cedar Hill. And that attention has not decreased. We're still out earning each previous year.
That's a good thing.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments from the public on Article 31, Cedar Hill drainage and parking improvements? Okay. So great. I guess we'll move to the next item on the agenda. I think it's great to stop.
Apologize about the design.
Oh, no problem. I think it's great to stop the runoff. Okay, next item on the agenda, any other matters relating to FY 25-24 budget, town meeting warrant articles?
Hearing none?
Elliot, do you have something on this?
This is more of a clerical error here. On the warrant, I'm looking at page 7 and 8, which are the same as 10 and 11.
already asked about it.
But we did, thank you.
No, I asked about it when I found it. I asked Mark about it, and he said, that's the way they had to put it in, because those pages were part of the article, and then when they repeat it, it's because it's part of the motion, correct? Yes, I had raised that question when I first got the warrant, if that was a duplicate, and he said, that's why they're in there that way.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
They said, these pages go with the article, it's similar to when you get the article written. That's the article. It didn't make sense to me to, but, comment, but it said that's what it was. Article, motion, even though they're the same.
All right.
But good catch, if I say something.
And
Hearing none.
I don't hear any other discussion or
Then I
comments.
would like to
Malcolm,
make a
right?
motion to continue this public hearing to Wednesday, March 6th at 7 PM at 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass, in the Great Hall at Town Hall on the 3rd floor.
Second.
Thank you, David.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. I said it first.
Yeah.
Who said it first? Elliot?
Just kind of.
So watch out.
Okay, motion and a
Good night, Mark.
second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks for watching, thanks for joining us.